Let's call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the panel members first. To my far left is Lynn Nesbitt. Neil Harden to my left. I'm Marcel Larondo. I'll be chairing. The assessors today are Sharon Tang, Merrick Frolick. Am I introducing all of you, or Arca Adakirkakana? Anyway, Arca. You guys are getting sworn in, are you?
I'll swear in if I'm going to swear in.
All right.
If it's okay. I may have something to add.
I figured you might. And Mr. Dupuy is here. And our secretaries today will be Belen Rojo and Kelsey Harrison. And just so you know, we'll be taking a short recess after the first file and then coming back. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit the discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessors make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to address assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And I would ask that everybody put their phones on silent, please. Swear them all in. You can start at that end.
Do you swear in or affirm?
I swear in.
Could you please state your name?
Derek Frolick,
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
the city.
Thank you. Could you please state your name? Sharon Tang. And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank
I want you to swear Mr.
you.
Dupuy in.
Oh, everyone at once?
He might have something to say.
Okay.
Get
Could you please
Arca
state your
too.
name?
Brian Paul Dupuy.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Alison,
Could you please state your name?
Arca Dekal,
And do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thank you.
All right, you might as well swear in. It's good to hear.
Could you please state your name?
Jared Story.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Could you please state your name?
Mark Newman.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Could you please state your name?
Ron Slaughter.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's the biggest swearing in ceremony. Very good. Our first item on our docket today will be this 1455 Molson, and we have liability to taxation, amount of assessed value, and classification of property. Mr. Newman, you'll be handling the classification of property and liability to taxation?
That's correct.
Can I get you to read the primary stuff on, and then they take over, because they're
Okay.
dealing with
Yeah,
that,
for
so they go
sure.
first.
File number is 193327. Roll number is 04005441,000. Property address is 1455 Molson. And the owner is River School Division number 9. And the assessed value for this property is $2,345,000.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newman. You got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll indicate that I understand that in terms of value, that the recommendation is forthcoming in that regard.
We'll deal with it after.
Yeah, Mr. Slaughter will address it. I guess what I need to do is start out by describing the property to you, and I've discussed this with Mr. Froelich. There are some photos in the assessor's brief. We've provided additional copies of those photos in a somewhat larger format together with the floor plans, which are also in the assessor's brief. So what I'd like to do is distribute those to everyone, and then I'll use that as the description of the property.
It's gotta be you in here, my glasses are fogging up. Yeah. See you again. Carry on, Mr. Newman.
So, if you look at the second page of this edition of material I just handed out, you've got the overhead photo of the building. It's classified as industrial warehouse, 1455 Molson Street, near the corner of Molson and Grassy. You've got improvements constructed at various dates, but there are 3 buildings on the site. You've got a bi-level office built in 1951. You've got a 1-story classroom built in 1964. Those are all both in the same building. You've got a shop warehouse, which is the middle building on the site. And then you've got what's a warehouse of 13,200 square feet, which is the building at the rear of the site. And the lower photo shows you the view from Molson Street. And so the building that is bi-level and has office and classroom in it is that front building with the red teardrop on it. The building described as the shop warehouse is the building to its right with the overhead door. And then at the back of the property, not much visible in this bottom photo, is the warehouse building. The building is owned by the River East School Division, and it is used for a variety of purposes, and we seek an exemption pursuant to the Municipal Assessment Act. I'll go into some more detail in that regard at the moment. I will observe that both Mr. Harden and Ms. Nesbitt have recently heard this presentation from me. You have not, Mr. Lorando. So, going to page 3, you've got a couple of photos of the front building, the exterior in the upper, the interior in the lower. Page 4 continues with the front building, the stairway up and down for the bi-level in the upper photo, and the lunchroom in the lower photo. Page 5 is a photo of a picture outside the classroom. Classes were actually in session when they were there, so they didn't go into the classroom at that point. Page 6 is the middle building, the shop warehouse as it's called. And this building is occupied by a variety of different trades who perform maintenance-related work for the schools, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a couple of moments. You also see on page 7, again, these are exterior photos of the front building, the bi-level classroom building, and then more photos of the interior of that building, the bi-level office stairwell, the lunchroom, the upper level office and reception. The lower photo on page 9, you see the plans all over the table. So one of the things that happens in this building is that the maintenance division of the school division, they operate out of here. The maintenance administration operates out of here, and that's why you see the plans all over this table. Page 10 is the lower level, again in the bi-level office building. And then page 11. And then page 12 is the classroom. And this is a classroom that provides specialized programming. The province, some years ago, created a program called the Specialized Learning Environment Initiative. And it deals with students who have been suspended by the school division for infractions of alcohol or other drug use policies. And so that they try not to lose these students from the system, they've created special programming at this location for the ongoing education and instruction of these students. And so to be clear, this is a classroom-related use for part of the building. and I'll expand upon that as I go along. Page 13 is the shop building exterior. Page 13 lower is the interior of the shop building, and you see more photos on page 14 of the shop building, some of the specialized equipment that's being used in this building. Page 15, you can see what is a millwork area, and again, everything that is done here finds its way into the schools and is used within the schools. Page 16 is the paint shop, again, for the benefit of the schools. And then page 17 is the exterior of the warehouse building. And what they do in this building, and you'll see it on page 18, when I went to school, every school had a gym. Every school underneath in the gym had a stage, and every stage underneath it had a storage area that you could take these rolling carts. The chairs would be stored on these carts. They'd be rolled in and out from under the stage. They don't do that anymore. What they do now is they centrally store the tables and chairs that go in and out of the schools as required. And you see at the top photo of page 18, the stack of tables that is visible there. Those go in and out of the schools as required. Page 19, you see desks. There's computers in this building as well. And then if you jump ahead to page 23, you see an overhead plan of the site. So again, the front building shown as number 1455, the maintenance shop, and then the storage building at the rear. And then on page 24, in a more detailed way, the front building, so you can see at the bottom, there's a reference to the classroom of 1,042 square feet. And then you go up or down, as the case may be, in the bi-level building, and you've got offices and meeting rooms. And again, it's substantially the maintenance-related operations that are going on there. So I've taken a few minutes to walk through all of this with you, because I wanted you to understand what goes on in this building. So, why are we here? You've got an exemption brief that I filed, and what I'm going to do is walk through that now. So we start on the first page with some detail about the building, the square footages, the classroom, what areas are what within the building, much of which I've covered already. At the bottom of the page, there's discussion about the classroom and what it's used for, and that continues on to the top of page 2, and what the use of the classroom is. And at the end of the first paragraph, students who have been suspended for infractions of alcohol and other drug use, and that's what goes on in this classroom. So if we jump ahead then to page 3 at the bottom, that's where we start to discuss the legislation. The Municipal Assessment Act, the Public Schools Act. I've given you some of the relevant excerpts. And if we come on to the top of page 4, now we're really digging into it. And so section 22(1) of the Municipal Assessment Act says that subject to sections 25 and 26, real property is exempt from taxation levied by a municipality where the real property is. And subparagraph D, used for a public school within the meaning of the Public Schools Act. And I'm going to come to the French version eventually, because it is somewhat different in its language. Relevant provisions of the Public Schools Act include the definition of school building, and it uses the word includes, and whenever you see the word includes, that means it's a broad definition. So it includes buildings used for the imparting of instruction, some of that is happening on this site, or for offices or other public school purposes, and I bolded that and I've highlighted that, simply to bring to your attention that what is going on in the rest of this site is offices for the maintenance-related operations. And I will say to you that the maintenance shop and the storage warehouse areas, they are clearly both used for public school purposes, because everything that goes on there is in furtherance of the objectives of the public school, which is the education of our youth of today. So, has there been a decision of the court directly on this issue? The answer is no. However, there has been a decision of our Manitoba Court of Appeal, and I'm going to talk about that for a moment. Before I do that, though, let me take you to my tab 1. And my tab 1 is the legislation, and if you go to page 4 in the lower right-hand corner, handwritten page 4, you see the section 20 and section 21. If we keep turning the pages, we'll go now to page 6. We get to 22(1)D, which I've just shown you. What you see on this page 6, however, is in the left-hand column, what I'm going to describe as the English version of the legislation, and in the right-hand column, you see the French version of the legislation, and that will become important as I will describe to you in a moment. If we turn the page to page 7, down towards the bottom, we see subparagraph D, which is the public schools exemption. And if we turn the page yet again to page 8, in the top right-hand column, we see the French version of subparagraph D. And I'm going to show you in a moment what our Court of Appeal had to say about the meaning of that provision. So let's then jump ahead to tab 2. Tab 2 is the Manitoba Court of Appeal decision involving the Sister McNamara School. And what it dealt with primarily was an issue of a parking lot that was separated by a property owned by a third party in between. That's not the important part of this case. What is the important part of this case is what the Court of Appeal had to say about the French version. So if we jump ahead now to page 10 of the decision, we come to paragraph 24 of the decision, where the court says, finally, while it was not argued in this appeal, the interpretation of section 22(1)D and 24 of the Municipal Assessment Act endorsed in these reasons is supported by a comparison of the French and English versions. And what they do in paragraph 25 is they quote both the French and the English versions. And if you go over to the next page, paragraph 26, the court explains and says, the English version indicates that real property is tax exempt where it is used for a public school within the meaning of the Public Schools Act. The French version indicates that real property is tax exempt where it is used for the needs of a public school within the meaning of the Public Schools Act. So now you've got a concept of used for the needs of a public school. And part of what I say to you is that this site, which actually does contain a classroom where instruction is imparted, this site which has offices that are related to the administration of the maintenance of the actual schools, the public school buildings in River East Transcona School Division, this building which has a maintenance shop which is used to maintain and repair the furniture and other equipment actually used in the schools, and this site which contains a building used for storage purposes, which includes the tables and chairs and other equipment that go in and out of the schools as required, I will say to you that clearly this property is being used for the needs of a public school, and I will say to you ultimately that clearly you should be prepared to grant the exemption. Now that is what tab 2 has to say. So let's now come back to the text of my brief, and we were on page 4. Go back before the tab, right back to the beginning, page 4. So what we see there, and I've been through this, section 22(1)D, we see the definition of school building, and again, as I said to you earlier, it includes buildings used in the imparting of instruction, or for offices or other public school purposes. So by definition, a school building includes buildings used for offices or other public school purposes. And again, I say to you clearly, what is going on this site in its totality is a use for other public school purposes in addition to the imparting of instruction. Now, if I can jump you ahead to page 8. So at page 8, you see the heading conclusion down towards the bottom, and I just want to mention 2 additional things to you. Firstly, the Interpretation Act of Manitoba is legislation that assists the courts and parties in interpreting the language of legislation. Section 6 says that every act should be interpreted as being remedial and give it a fair, large, and liberal interpretation that best ensures the attainment of its objects. And section 7, over on the top of the next page, says that the English and French versions of the acts and regulations are equally authoritative in accordance with section 23 of the Manitoba Act. And what that says to you in plain English is that the citizens of Manitoba are entitled to the benefit of the language of both the English version and the French version. Now, I say to you, the English version, because of the definition of school building, is sufficient to capture everything that is going on this property and allow you to grant the exemption. But I go a step further and say to you that the French version, because of its language, which speaks about the property being used for the needs of a public school, I say to you clearly, as I have, whatever is going on this property relates to a public school, and therefore the exemption can and should be granted on the basis of the French version as well. Subject to your questions, those are our submissions on this issue.
Questions?
Do you want to start, Okay, can I ask you one question for starters?
Yeah.
When you're reading off of page 4 on your brief with regards to the definition of school building, why did you omit the second portion of the definition?
It doesn't help you, Mr. Froelich, but if you want me to explain it, I will.
Well, how I read it
Yes, go ahead.
is that, you know, it does not include a building or part thereof constructed and designed for the use solely for or chiefly for administration functions of the school division, school district, and other than those exercised by principals and teachers. So it clearly says administrative functions here. How I look at it is they're there to provide administrative functions. If they're planning, like you had stated in your picture.
Is that a question?
I didn't say that yet.
Yeah, no problem.
He's
So-
getting to it, I know where he's going.
Yeah, I'm long-winded. So why did you not include that part of the definition there, please?
So let me explain. So the setup of this definition is, it starts with defining what's included within a school building. And then it creates an exception to what falls within that definition. And the exception is for a building or part that is used solely or chiefly, that's the exception to what's in a school building, for administrative functions of the school division or the school district. So in my mind, the administrative functions of the school division as a whole is where you will find the superintendent, the secretary, the treasurer, the senior management, in other words. And very frequently, and it's the case in River East School Division as well, those functions are carried on in a separate building which is separated from all else. Winnipeg School Division number 1, for example, the superintendent and that level of senior management is located in their building that fronts onto Notre Dame. Here, it's located at 591 Roche for River East School Division. So what I'm saying to you is, that section properly interpreted does not mean every time you've got an office where administration is happening, that does not fall within a school use or school building. What it means in my submission to you is, It's the administrative functions of the school division as a whole. In other words, where the school division's central superintendent-type office is located. That's what the exception applies to, in my view.
Do you have a follow-up question for that?
I have a question. So on your page 2 of your brief, at the bottom, it says the bi-level office building contains the office of the senior maintenance staff, including the director of maintenance, assistant director of maintenance, 3 supervisors, 2 foremen, and administrative support staff. So wouldn't that mean that they're using it as the administrative function?
So every aspect of the school operation will have somebody who's in charge. I'm gonna use neutral words, somebody who's in charge.
Right.
And the hierarchy of a school division will start at the top with the superintendent and the most senior manager. In my mind, those are the people who are responsible for the administration of the school division as a whole. The maintenance person is not responsible for the administration of the school division as a whole. He's responsible for the administration of the maintenance functions carried on at that location. The computer person, the person who manages IT services for a school division, not part of senior management, not located where the superintendent is, his office is not going to be excluded on the basis that that's operation of the school division as a whole. That's the distinction I would make. So yes, they perform an administrative and management function relating to maintenance, but they don't perform a management function relating to the school division as a whole. And that's the distinction I make.
So, but what is the definition of a public school then?
Your brief has it.
Okay, but I'm sure you're aware of it.
So a public school is an institution for education purposes.
Okay. So, when we're looking at the majority of the aspects of this building, is it conducting educational purposes?
I guess it depends how you define education. So let's start with, clearly there's a classroom there, and I think we'll all agree that that's an educational function in the sense of imparting instruction. Where we part ways, I anticipate, is your view will be that the maintenance function that allows the actual school buildings and children to be instructed in a safe environment, you will say to me that's not part of a public school, and therefore it shouldn't count. And my response to that will be, look at the definition of school building, other public school purposes, look at the French version, and remember that under the legislation, the responsibility of school divisions under the Public Schools Act is to ensure that the students have a safe and caring school environment, which means they have to be in a building that is safe from an ongoing maintenance and repair perspective. They have to be, the school division has to employ teachers and other personnel, and the school division has the responsibility to build, repair, furnish, keep in order, and regulate the use of school buildings. And so I would say to you that the maintenance is part of those overall general functions and obligations of a school division, and for those reasons, it should fall within the exception.
And so would the Minister of Education and the Deputy Minister of Education also be exempt?
Their offices?
Yeah,
No, because they're not in the school division.
but they're supporting the needs of the school.
Absolutely they are, but they're not in the school division, and I dare say, I would guess the legislative building is exempt.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm just saying the offshoots of it. Is there a full-time principal located at this location?
No.
No. And is there regular students at this location? Like that start at 9 o'clock and finish at 3 o'clock under a normal public school?
Regular in the sense that they are students who are of the age who would typically be in school, somewhat irregular in the sense that they've had problems staying within the more traditional programming, and so an additional stream has been created to assist them and facilitate them continuing their education.
And so, so would you agree with me that public schools are tax exempt?
Yes?
fully tax exempt?
Yes.
Yeah. And is there anything in the legislation that makes a public school school tax exempt?
Not that I'm aware of. Although this property has been classified in that
Yeah,
way.
but there's nothing in the legislation that makes public schools school tax exempt, correct?
To the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
I'd like to just ask a question. That wasn't something that you as the appellant sought, that school tax exemption. That was just a resulting decision from the board
In 2018.
in 2018?
That's correct.
Okay. Just want a clarification. Thank you.
I don't think it's what the city sought either.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it's what the city sought either.
No, we know that. It's
Yeah.
just, I think he made the point that there's nothing contained within the Municipal Assessment Act that would permit for a school tax exemption on a public school building.
Is seminary of learning and a public school the same thing?
I don't think the legislation has been interpreted that way.
So they are separately different then, correct? In terms of the legislation, the numbers are where it's stated in the assessment act?
Yeah, I'm not aware if an argument has ever been made that a school division
Okay,
building would fall within a seminary of learning exemption.
okay. And are there any seminary of learnings that get a full exemption that you know of? Under the Public Schools Act?
Well, seminaries of learning, I mean, if you're talking about private vocational schools, for example, so they're not gonna be captured by the Public Schools Act.
Okay.
There can be private schools that will get a full exemption
Okay.
because they meet the qualifications in the sense of teaching a, what I'll call standard curriculum.
Okay. And what's provided at this school is not a standard curriculum at this location, correct?
Well, it's standard for that group that's
Yeah.
in there.
Okay. Is there any sort of cafeteria services or any food services provided at this location?
About beyond a lunchroom being
Yeah.
available, but
And that would be for
there's
yeah,
no service provided.
and that would be for the staff, I guess, essentially, correct? Any other questions? Sure.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, so basically, in your opinion, this property is not considered as an administrative function of the school division?
That's correct.
Okay. Even though it is providing administrative services to all the school buildings?
So it's providing maintenance service and storage for school buildings.
Right.
The people who manage or run the maintenance area are located here,
Right.
but these are not people who have overall responsibility for management and administration of the school division at large.
So in your opinion, only the people who makes the decision regarding to administrative function is considered as the administrative function of the school division?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions?
Just a couple other things. Would inner city schools have outside storage facilities for things like chairs? Or would they be located within the school confines, within the unit of the school?
The answer is it depends. And having had the opportunity to do these various buildings now for a couple of cycles, we did a week ago 50 Monterey. And 50 Monterey is an old school which has in it construction maintenance like this one. It also has an old gym that is used for storage of tables and chairs and staging that moves in and out as needed to the other schools. It also had psychologists and audiologists located in it, and a panel of McPherson, Nesbitt, and Therian granted the exemption on that building. So, you know, the answer to your question more narrowly is, It depends on the property. Some of them do have room for storage on site, but more and more the trend has been to centralize everything and take it out of the individual schools for purposes of efficiency.
I have a question arising.
Go ahead, Mr. Dupuy.
50 Monterey, you mentioned 50 Monterey in the panel, grant an exemption. That's been heard basically since 2014, 3 cycles. Same arguments, and the results in the previous 3 cycles were confirmation of the taxable liability. Correct.
In 16 and 18 confirmation.
15, 16, and 18.
I don't know about 15. In 16 and 18 confirmation, and in 20 exempt.
Exempt.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Take your time, Sharon. We're not rushing it. French version?
It was on
What page is the
page
French
10. We were just trying to look at the
Sorry?
French
The French
definition.
version, where was it?
Page, in tab 1, on page 8, top right-hand corner.
Okay, tab 1, page 8, sorry.
Oh, no, I meant the decision the judge made.
Oh, so that'll be tab 2, and that'll be on page 11 of the decision, at the top, paragraph 26.
Okay, so according to the decision, it says, the real property used for the operation of a school, of a public school is tax exempt. So for this property here, it basically serves all the schools in the school division. So why would you think that this property should be exempt? Because it is not just serving one particular public school, it is serving all the public schools as a whole within the division.
So just so I understand your question, you're saying that when it serves a number of public schools, it can't be caught by this language, but if it served only one school, it could be caught by this language.
That is correct.
Well, I don't read it that way. You know, again, we come back to the definition of school building, which includes buildings used for various purposes, including the imparting of instruction, offices, or other public school purposes. So by definition, in the Public Schools Act, that is what a school building is.
But you said that's your interpretation, correct? From the order that was on page 11, section 26?
Sorry, ask me that again?
Well, that's your interpretation, like, you said that you don't read it that way, how we've read it, or how Sharon posed the question to you.
Right.
Okay. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Neil, any questions?
Well, we've been over this several times, so no questions.
Lynn, would you have any questions?
I do. Are these buildings used for anything other than public school purposes? Are they used by the community at large? Are there any of the services provided in this location for anywhere else?
No,
It's simply to support the operation of a school or schools
Yes.
in the district.
Right.
So basically, the argument, as I understand it, is we have a new model of how school divisions are operating. Back in the day, everything was housed in a single building. The The janitor was there, the maintenance guy was there, everything was there in the single building. Now as populations grow, school buildings maybe aren't suited for that purpose, they have a different service delivery model. Is that what I'm hearing you
That's part of
basically
it.
saying?
That's part of it, and the reason for that, of course, is, and, you know, I say this in many ways for dramatic effect, in the day of a one-room schoolhouse, things were much simpler. When I went to school, things were much simpler than they are today. If we think about how school divisions have evolved since I came out of school in the early 70s, the variety of support services, the nutrition, the psychology, the social workers, all aspects, and the complexity of what goes on in schools now. The computers, the specialized classrooms with specialized equipment to facilitate learning. Everything has gotten much more complex, and in order to make the school operations more efficient, because of course things get more costly, all the school divisions have gone to the centralized models, and that's what's brought me here. It's these buildings that serve these centralized efficiency purposes. That's what's happened, and they've evolved over time. And I don't think anybody would say that if we had a maintenance room in a school where they were fixing desks and fixing bookshelves and working on computers, would anybody say that that room should not be exempt, that it should be taxable if it were actually in a public school? I don't think so. So really what they've done is they've taken what was previously in schools, it's gotten bigger, and so it's made it more difficult for it to stay in schools, but they've taken it out of the schools and they've centralized it for these purposes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. That's all the questions.
Can we hear your presentation? I might have some questions going the other way. On this issue.
Yep.
So according to the municipal code, so on my brief, page 9, according to the municipal act, the real property partial exemption, 22(1)(d), it says the property is used for a public school within the meaning of Public School Act or a private school within the meaning of the Education Administration Act. According to the definition from the Public School Act, public school means an institution for educational purpose. So in our opinion, there is no education happening. Well, there is only one classroom within this property that has the educational function defined in this act. So we think that this portion of the property should be exempt, should be fully exempt as 40T. And the remaining of the property is, in our opinion, should be administrative function because there's no educational purpose in the other portion of the school, of the property. It is purely the administrative function of the school division. So if you turn to page 12, according to the Public Schools Act, a school building includes the building required or used in a school division or school district for the imparting of institution or for offices or other public school purpose. So based on these definitions, we don't think the other portion of the property is used as a school building. If you continue reading, it says the school building does not include a building or a part thereof constructed, designed, or used solely or chiefly for administrative function of the school division or school district, other than those exercised by principals or teachers. In the appellant's brief, they provided a case that is Southwestern Regional Health Authority, Inc. versus Health. So I printed out the case. So in the case,
You have copies for us, or?
yes.
I want more tabs that I can insert as we're going along. Just drop it on the desk there. Still got the paper clip.
So if you turn to page 4 of the case, so paragraph 9 on top of the page. There are, however, 2 problems which arise in this case, either one of which might be fatal to the position of the health authority. 1, the building in question not only provide administrative service to the several hospitals now owned by the health authority, but also to a number of personal care homes. The Act treats personal care homes in a different manner than hospitals. And the second problem is acknowledging the hospital services are provided in the administration building, and that is necessary and usual to the operation of a hospital. Must the building be located on property which is contiguous to a hospital in order to claim an exemption from municipal taxation? So paragraph 10, I prefer to decide a case on the basis of the first issue and would hold that because what takes place in the building provides administrative support to both hospitals and personal care homes, a full exemption is not available. And in the appellant's brief, they include the information from page 5, which is the information from Judge Steele. However, if you turn to page 7, paragraph 25, it says these exemptions reflect a public policy objective that certain real properties should be exempt or partially exempt from taxation. And paragraph 26, it says these kind of public policy issues are for the legislatures and not for the court. I would dismiss the appeal with cost. So we're asking the board to reinstate the class of liability to 60P, which is the same as the 2016 assessment.
And board decision, yeah.
Excuse me, I gotta stop you for 1 second. I think I made an error. You guys are the ones that are bringing it forward to change it from, is it now recognized as institutional 40S? And you're trying to change it back? Then it should have been you that went first.
Well,
No.
No?
Matters with respect to class and liability, the onus falls on. This is currently a school tax exempt property, and they're looking for a full exemption.
No, they're looking for school exemption.
no,
No,
full
sir,
exemption.
they are looking for
Oh,
a
you're
full
looking for a full
exemption. Again, there's no provision in Municipal Assessment Act to grant a school tax exemption to a school.
But I think, but to your point, Mr. Lauren, though, based on what the assessor just said, I think the city is looking for fully taxable.
No, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. We were looking for a split classification, similar to the 900 St. Mary's Day.
Like
We
40S and.
we acknowledge there is we acknowledge that there is a classroom, there is school activities going on in here, and require full exemption. We also acknowledge that there are administrative functions for the needs of the school division located within this facility, and would request a 60 taxable classification, liability.
So, just so I'm clear, you're saying that there should be a full exemption for the classroom-related area.
Yes.
You're saying that the balance of the area, because right now the entirety is 40S,
Correct.
you're saying the balance of the area should be treated as fully taxable.
Correct.
So you are attempting to change the classification from 40S to fully taxable. Except for the classroom. area.
Except for the classroom, yes.
Yes.
Right, which is to Mr. Laurendo's point, and you are trying to change the classification.
Yeah.
So you should have gone first, but leaving that aside, I don't care about that.
Oh, you were going after the classification change, not him.
No, they're
No,
going
we-
after
we
the
are as well.
classification.
Yeah. We are
This
as well.
needs to be very clear. They're looking for a classification change to fully exempt status.
Right.
Yeah, to
So they want it from
40S.
40S to
Yes.
40E.
From 40S to 40.
To 40E,
To 40E.
yes.
Yes.
Because they want to be fully
It's
exempt.
40S now,
And you're looking for 40E.
that's correct.
Because they don't want to pay municipal taxes.
Now I'm certain.
So how does the city request?
And the city is saying, we acknowledge that the classroom area should be 40E. We think the rest of it should not be 40S. We think it should be fully taxable.
That is correct.
Okay. And then my question would be, did the city appeal classification?
You appealed.
You appealed it,
classification.
so it opened it up.
Well, it opens it up for what I want.
Yeah.
Does it open it up for what you want?
Well, you know, it's just like if you appeal your
Oh, yeah.
assessment, it gives us the opportunity to apply for an increase.
And now he's.
What's the
correct.
difference?
You did,
Well, there has
you
to be a
did put
10-day
it in
notice.
your. let me
Yeah,
see
of course,
his-
yeah.
His application.
The three-
His application, his one that he signed. The actual application that he filled out is there.
Yeah, he did have the 3 points.
Now, you had the 3 points on there, so, yeah, it's
No,
your.
I understand that we've sought a full exemption. My point is simply, the city hasn't sought a change in classification.
They don't have to, you open the door, they can now,
Well, all right, fair enough. Okay,
the door's open.
all right.
Now we have to close it. I just wanted to make sure I understood where we were headed here. I'm sorry about that. Continue, I'm sorry I cut you off. I apologize.
I think we're finished.
You're finished?
Yeah, we're open to questions.
Yeah, Mr. Newman, you still have some questions?
Yes, so whoever's going to answer them on the other side.
I think Mr. Dupuis probably best suited to answer. If not, we'll be asking a lifeline.
Look at page 10 of your brief. This is section 41 of the Public Schools Act, correct?
Yes,
And what section 41 of the Public Schools Act does is it lays out the powers and duties of school boards, employees of school divisions, and school districts, correct?
yes.
And then it starts out by saying the heading is duties of school boards. So if we look at 41(1)(b)(1), one of the obligations and duties of a school board is to ensure that each pupil enrolled in a school within the jurisdiction of the school board is provided with a safe and caring school environment, correct?
Yes,
And then if we jump ahead to B.3, One of the duties is to ensure that there is a written policy respecting school food and nutrition that is prepared for each school in the school division, correct?
Yes.
We jump to the next page, subparagraph G. One of the duties is to employ teachers and such other personnel as may be required by the school division or school district, correct?
Yes.
So, teachers are teachers, obviously, but among the other personnel that may be required would be people like maintenance people, repair people, correct?
Yes, correct, as stated, required by the school division or the school district.
Right. So if the school division requires them, you would agree that they're going to be working in school buildings, agreed?
We would agree that it's an administrative function of the school division.
That's not my question, Mr. Dupuy.
I believe that was your question.
My question was, would you agree that if the school division has to hire these people, they will be working in school buildings?
I would agree.
Right, and they will be working in maintenance buildings? Yes?
They'll be working primarily in the schools, right?
The maintenance people will be working primarily in the schools.
It would seem logical that they will be working in the school to make that particular entity, that particular bricks and mortar building safe.
Right.
That isn't gonna happen in an administrative office, it's gonna happen in the bricks and mortar facility.
Then let's look at subparagraph O on page 11. One of the duties is to select and purchase or rent school sites and premises, but also to build, repair, furnish, keep in order, and regulate the use of school buildings. You see that? So repairing and furnishing and keeping in order will require maintenance-related services, correct?
That's
Sure.
correct.
Which,
And you see the phrase there, the use of school buildings. School buildings, of course, is the defined term that is found on page 12 that talks about buildings where instruction is imparted, but it also talks about offices or other public school purposes, correct?
Correct.
And do we agree that therefore, the ongoing maintenance and keeping in repair of school buildings is a public school purpose?
I think with respect to the points pointed out here, it is certainly an administrative function of the school board as listed, that they must maintain these premises, these bricks and mortar school facilities.
And in order to do that, they have to hire the personnel with the appropriate skills and trades, correct?
Yes. And outside contractors.
And outside contractors. All right, those are my questions, thank you.
Neil,
I have a very wise question to ask, but I forgot what it was, so I'm gonna pass.
Join the club. Join the club.
it's okay, I've already buried myself twice. Lynn, do you have any questions before I make a fool of myself again?
I acknowledge what you're saying about the administrative purposes. But my question is maintenance, the fix and repair, do you consider that an administrative purpose? The fix and repair of school property, desks, tables, like I'm just trying to understand how far you see this administration umbrella is covering. Administration, yes, the body that sits there and passes the policies and establishes the budgets and does that, clearly administrative, I get that. But I'm talking about the maintenance, the actual work, the hammers, the hammers and nails.
I think we'll let Brian answer that.
The actual hammers and nails.
Yeah, the work.
That goes on within a school itself, in a school building, like within a public school.
Uh-huh,
Public school that you and I attended that we know about,
right.
it's an exempt entity.
No, I understand that.
Yes.
But if the work is the work, whether or not it's housed in the school or not housed in the school. Do you see a distinction just on that basis, that because it's not housed in the school, it somehow
Right.
falls
So-
under that administrative
I
umbrella?
get that. So if we look at it in the broad sense, then when the contractor comes, picks up the desk and takes it back to his shop, then his shop must be for the needs of a public school.
Right? But we're not talking about that contractor's building. We're talking about a building that's owned by the school division. So I'm not, I see that as different. There's completely different ownership there. But it's more the
But the
work.
whole, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay.
But the premise is, in a very broad-based term, for the needs of a public school.
Right, okay,
So what we need to determine is what is for the needs of a public school.
Right.
And what, by legislation and paper,
Yeah.
is for the needs of the school division.
right. So when they're storing desks or tables or bleachers that are only used 2-3 times a year by a public school, and there's no ability to store them on site, they're just housed in another place, do you make that distinction that just they're housed in another place and therefore that's the justification? They're not used for a public school, they might be used for several, because now they're sharing, which is probably a good thing. But-
Possibly.
Yeah. Well, not every school might have storage facilities, so, or they do, but they're inadequate. I'm just trying to understand the position, that's all, I'm not, yeah.
Like Mr. Hard, I have very,
You can do it in your summation, though.
Actually, I thought of that very
Come on,
wise question.
No, I'm just,
So if you could just throw that back at me once again, that question.
okay, I'm just trying to understand. I understand what you're talking, classrooms, okay,
Yeah.
we're all in,
Yeah.
you know, you're both in agreement on the classroom side. There's agreement on what's administration at its highest level, what we think of as the school board office, traditionally.
Okay, so this is
But
where I
I'm
was
talking
going.
about the maintenance
Yeah.
side, the maintenance where work gets done, and that work, fixing of X, let's say, it gets transported to the school, now used in the school. So I'm trying to see a distinction when there's work being done in a specific location versus on site. You're not fixing it on site, you're fixing it somewhere else, you're taking it to the exempt site, the
Yeah.
school. So you're seeing a distinction, ownership of the building is the same, but you see it as
There is a
administrative?
distinction, because it's an administrative function. It's an administrative function as listed as an administrative function of the school division.
I think what he was trying to say is that in the old days, the repairs are in-house.
Yes.
So everything is
Right.
on-site.
Yes.
Okay.
But now, they separate everything.
Yes.
So they centralize everything to one location.
Yes.
So now that location is dealing with everything within the school division.
Right.
So now, according to legislation, if anything is dealing with everything that is within the school division, it is not considered as a public school. So that is what our argument comes
No, I
in.
understand.
Right, so
I-
if that is not a public school, it shouldn't be school.
Exempt.
Exactly.
Exactly, and I don't understand how it got to be 40S. That totally boggles my mind, but whatever.
I
But,
think what we're suggesting in the 40S is that one way or the other, resolution has to happen with this property. And getting back, I think you had mentioned taking the stuff off-site and storing it. I kind of lost my train of thought again. We've gone here and there and whatnot, but
can I ask a question? How are the school division bus barns treated?
well, the
That's
vast
another issue.
majority of them, the vast majority of them in the
Just
city of
asking.
Winnipeg are taxable. There is one or two that are exempt.
Because of a
Right.
decision?
President
Right,
Board.
and, you know, with respect to the Louisville School Division, the vast majority of their school busing comes from First Choice School Student Services at the end of St. Mary's. It's a private contractor.
Right.
Is it for the, and they provide all the busing. Is that for the needs of a public school?
Good question.
Well, I'm not gonna answer, are you? Because I don't know anything
But
about
then
that.
we
I'm
also
just
say, but what
asking.
If we
Translate.
look at the very broad-based description, and I think in summation, perhaps I'll do a summation, and perhaps I can draw it down and maybe make a point that the board, for the board's consideration, simple as that.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
so right now, you're basically wanting it to remain the 40 institutional and the 40S.
No, he's asking for a full
They
exemption.
You're asking for 40E. And then when was, don't tell me this, but was it me that did this?
Yes, it was.
See what you.
I'm sitting there going, I remember this.
But in
So
practical.
why did I?
We say that
So
on
we
many
did
occasions,
40
just teasing.
Okay. No, so we did institutional, and then we did an S. What the hell were we doing?
Made everybody equally unhappy.
Yes, we taped everybody. And nobody appealed it?
Well, it is.
It's at the-
Nobody appealed it to the court?
Everybody's
It's at the court
appealed
bench.
this to a higher level.
It's at the court of Queen's Bench.
All of these are appealed. I think we're only 3-4 weeks away from attending
A first meeting with.
first meeting with the judge. We're 3 or 4
let's-
weeks, 3 weeks
So
away.
you're asking for
40E.
40E, which make it totally exempt
Yeah.
Right.
of
Correct.
everything.
Right.
100%.
And you're asking that,
We're asking for the classroom of 1,000 square feet, and we got a value here.
And you got
That's
a
gonna be,
value.
that will be
And that would be
40E,
40.
and everything else 60T.
that,
So,
yeah, now I
yeah,
know what they're asking.
I mean,
We'll get-
we're
we'll
not
get to
on
that.
that.
We're not at
We're
value
not
yet,
on
but.
We're not at a value
We're
yet,
not.
we're not discussing it
Yeah.
on that. I'm just trying to figure out this part of it, because you were putting forward your 40E argument. Did you guys understand that that's what they were doing?
Not initially, no.
No?
I did.
It took me a while.
I knew it, I knew what Mr. Newman
I shouldn't have been
wanted.
dealing with this 2 years ago, is what you're telling me.
I knew what Mr. Newman wanted, I was not at all clear what the
Okay.
city was asking for.
Okay. Oh, you know, I do have a did you actually find your question?
Well, I guess just more of an observation and a question. With 60T, city collects the taxes from the school division, turns around, hands the school division back the school tax portion, right?
that's
That is
correct.
correct.
So it just increases administrative costs for the city, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's stealing from Peter to pay Paul.
It's certainly unusual. You know, there's a lot of arguments, and, you know, we might be on the same page in some respects, but we deal with the current legislation. You know, our personal opinions and our personal feelings, I mean, I guess from one perspective.
Maybe we should get Marcelo
Yeah.
bringing it up with his
Yeah,
colleague.
from one perspective, perhaps, you know, this is our opinion as individuals. I mean, you know, we have personal feelings on the matter, but
And we shouldn't get personal about it, but I keep hearing Sharon refer to the used for a public school, but I always keep going back to the French version where it says used for the needs of a public school.
Sorry, is that?
You've referred to the used for a public school a number of times,
Right,
when it's, and the French version actually says used for the needs of a public school,
right.
not just used for a public school.
my question to you, Mr. Chairman, would you think that they're saying exactly the same thing, or there's some significant difference between the two?
There always is in French. Say so.
There's a lot of French legislation that the spirit is exactly the same.
Only because they try to do it Napoleonic as it is written, right? So
So
that's
we
why.
can, we can deal with that, I can deal with that in summation.
Did you think of your question yet? Or you- was
No,
just-
I did, do.
Okay, I think we're gonna hear from the city now, so that I'm really gonna be
But
confused.
we did hear from the city.
No, no.
Oh, on value.
On the value. No, we
Um,
didn't hear from them about value yet.
We just want to make a revision of the valuation, so just want you to put this in.
Oh, wait.
So if you just look at the last column.
Just wait until they got their coffee over here.
I need to read it, so. Yeah, go start.
So if you're just looking at the last column of the spreadsheet, the value on the top is considered as 60T, which is tax exempt, is taxable. And the value at the bottom is 40E, which is fully exempt. So the portion, how we separate it is according to the appellant's brief. There is 1,042 square foot for the classroom portion. So we take that area, and because the ones, if you just look at my brief, on page 15 of my brief, it has the floor plan for the upper level and the lower level. So the picture on the top is the floor plan for the main floor. So the section on the left is the 1 story, which consists of the classroom, and the total square footage for the 1 story is 2,133 square feet. And out of the this whole space, 1,042 square feet is the classroom, and the other portion is the common area that shares with the bi-level structure as well. So basically what we did is we take into the consideration of the shared accommodation, and we take 5% of the common area and then add that space into the classroom section. So the total square footage that we propose to be 40E is 1,097 square feet. And we applied $6.92 per square foot, gives us $7,591. And we use 2.5% vacancy, $3.75 for the shortfall, 2% for expenses, and that gives us an NOI of $7,151. Then we use 8% cap rate, which gives us $89,000. And the remaining area of this building, plus the other 2 buildings on the property, it has a total of 28,040 square feet. And we applied $5.99 per square foot, and that gives us $168,033. Then we use the same vacancy, same shortfall, and same expense ratio. That gives us $157,927 for our net operating income. Then we use 8% cap rate, which gives us $1,974,000. And the total valuation for this property is $2,063,000.
Is that the number you're looking for?
Mr. Chairman, we're agreeing to the final value of $2,063,000. Again, our position is that the entire property should be classified 40E, that is fully exempt. As far as the portioning, I didn't put much thought into that. I mean, listening to the rationale, I'm kind of thinking, do we want to be taking percentages of common area that are used for the shop and exclude washrooms and exclude the teacher's office? And so I'm going to simplify just by saying we're agreeing to the total value, $2,063,000. And then the request is at the classification of 40E.
Is that your full presentation, by the way?
Yes.
That's it? So now you can make your presentation on your case, or was that your presentation?
That's it for me.
Shorten that one real quick.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were done as well, Mark?
Subject to summation.
Oh, that's what I was afraid of. Brian, we'll let you go first on your summation. Oh, you want Mark to go first?
Is it a matter of bonus?
Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Remember, if I go first, I go last. Because I get to respond. That's okay, I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, you could respond.
I'm happy to go first.
You carry the stick.
You've heard my submission in detail, I'm not going to repeat it. Clearly, as you point out, Mr. Lorendeau, there's a difference in the English and the French versions. The English version essentially says, used as a public school, except you have the definition of school building in the legislation, and you have the obligations of school divisions contained in the Public Schools Act, which are quite expansive in light of the changing role of schools and school divisions in our society. The French version is quite broad in its language in the sense that if it's related to the needs of a public school, we don't have these maintenance facilities, save and except to service the public schools. That's the sole and only reason why they're there. So I'm saying to you that on either version of the legislation, an exemption is appropriate and should be granted in full as 40E. Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian. Knock it out of the ballpark.
With respect to our position, acknowledging their thoughts, and I guess I'll lead off with the whole French language thing. All of this has transpired from the Sister McNamara case. Both the Queen's Bench and the Court of Appeal are in the appellant's briefs. I won't hammer in them, but I'll touch upon them a little bit. There's a few very important factors came out of that, and one of there was much to do with respect to the French-English version, but the judge, trial judge, made it very clear that you need to put that aside and not concentrate on one or the other, but you need to look at them in a harmonized manner. And made that very clear. To focus on one or the other exclusively is probably an error. So the other thing that came out of Sister McNamara was the definition of a school site was included. And the parking lot for Sister McNamara School was exempted as the parking lot of Sister McNamara School. And they wanted it made very clear that that uncontiguous, that piece of property down there owned by the school division was not getting an exemption on its own right as a school, but it was tied directly to Sister McNamara School. So an exemption was tied directly to a school. The other important information that came from both the Queen's Bench and the Court of Appeal was that Justice Steele at the time, they spoke about the Southwest Man case versus the city of Souris, and that a hospital exemption and a school exemption were really quite identical in their wording, that a hospital included a hospital which had insurable services, or office building, or other buildings used for hospital purposes, similarly to the public school definition of a place that imparts education. But they brought it back down and acknowledged that we're really talking about an integrated campus. And what is evident in our valuations, in our classifications, is where you have a school and you have portable classrooms or portable offices or off-site auditoriums or storage garages where they store maybe snow clearing equipment, etc. These are exempt entities as schools for the needs of that particular school, singular, because the act is a school, it's singular, and it's tied all directly to a particular school. Southwest Man also basically spoke to the fact that, and just touch upon the case, that there was an administrative building that was really for the needs of all the hospitals, and it was very clear to everybody that it's utilized by all the hospitals. But it's not, it was centralized services for that district, and serviced all the hospitals. But the exemption was denied because it itself is not a hospital and doesn't meet the definition of a hospital. It's purely administrative and solely administrative in nature. And even though it's acknowledged and the hospital definition, the school definition were quite the same, they did not grant the exemption as a hospital for that particular building. And we're basically saying, we're looking at the integrated campuses here, these particular schools, and all the other office buildings, all the portable classrooms, everything that are involved in that integrated campus as being exempt according to the definition of the School Act and the definition of a school site, which is also inclusive in the evidence of the Court of Appeal. And so that's really our position, that if it's not used as a place where they impart instruction or the associated buildings there, then it has to be considered solely an administrative function of the school division, as listed in their own documentation as a requirement of the school division. These are requirements of a school division, and there's no denying that. We would all agree that definitely the school division requires this. But does an actual physical bricks and mortar public school need that building over there? And a final comment is, when we talk about the school superintendent, which was mentioned and stuff like that, he's top dog, and then there's a chain of command, and these are departments within it: payroll departments, maintenance departments, student services departments, to name a few. Ms. Nesbitt, you actually alluded to the way the school divisions are morphing in the modern today. When we went to school, it was quite a bit, compact. The bottom line is that the actual physical administration offices can't house the administrative requirements anymore. And rather than building additions, they're going out and using school buildings that are no longer required for the impartment of instruction and turning those into their administrative offices. And that's just a physical need, because you can only get 5 pounds of potatoes. You can't get 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound potato sack. It's pretty simple as that. So they're utilizing, and fiscally responsible, I would say, they're utilizing empty school buildings for their administrative needs, as opposed to spending money to expand or build new offices. And that's really our position.
All clear? Thank you very much. Oh, he is going to get one thing.
Just two things.
Two things.
He talked about Southwest Man,
Yeah.
and I just want to read you a little bit here. Q-Ban JA, writing the majority reasons, held that the administrative offices were not exempt because they serve both exempt hospitals and non-exempt personal care home properties. Okay, so that's all we'll say about Southwest Mass. We have a definition in the legislation of school building, which is crystal clear. It includes buildings where instruction is imparted, but it also includes buildings used for offices or other public school purposes. The position of the city is really that wherever there is somebody who is not a teacher, that is an administrative office of the school division. Every single square foot that is not used for teaching purposes is the administrative offices of the school division. And I said to you earlier, if they built a bigger school, and instead of using it as classrooms, but if you had a building with what I'll call 20 classrooms, but they took 3 of those classrooms and put into those classrooms the maintenance services for the building, instead of having them off-site, created storage there for chairs and desks and other equipment. Would anybody say, when all of that maintenance relates to that building and all of that equipment relates to that building, would anybody say that those 3 classrooms or the square footage represented by it is taxable? I don't think so. And that's, you have to look at legislation as a whole when you interpret it, and looking at it as a whole, I say to you, the end result is that this property should be fully exempt. Thanks for your patience, and it's been quite an afternoon.
I'd like to thank you all for coming. We're gonna take the room for a little bit, if you could all give it to us.
My head is
We're gonna
burning.
recess for a few minutes. Shut the mic off. We'll call the meeting back to order. We've now got our other secretary in, Valen Robo, and the first piece on the docket today will be 2146 St. Mary's Road, amount of assessed value. That sounds good. When you're ready, Arka.
All right, so first property, we're going in order, right? We're going in order of the properties?
Yes, we're 2146 St. Mary's Road.
So, subject property with a file number 192629, roll number 0802122670, 2146 St. Mary's Road. Owner is 5288321 Manitoba Corporation. For the roll year of 2020 and the reference date of April 1st, 2018, the assessed value is $1,773,000.
Before we continue, I was involved with a sale of part of this property. Are you guys okay? I didn't, where the condos are now, behind it, was split off, it was subdivided. You're okay with that, Arka? I didn't have anything to do with the station itself, just with the subdivision.
Okay. So, yes, parcel use code is CMVSR vehicle service related, 1989 year build, planned area 30,990 square feet, planned area 8,230 square feet. The recommendation is to maintain the 2020 assessment of $1,773,000. On page 2, there are pictures of the aerial view of the station, gas station, and the building consists of a gas station, vehicle, the storefront and the garage, and the car wash. So page 2 and 3 provide pictures of the subject property. Page 4 contains information on for income-related properties. There is subject sale history, there is no subject sale history, and on page 5 there are rent comparables of properties with similar type of use that are car washes and SKPs altogether, and the related prices per square foot to the right. So with that, just to quickly go over it, some properties are pure SKPs, some are a combination of SKP and VCW, which is also consists of car wash. And net leases are lease start dates are there also, as well as square footage, rate per square foot, and for SKP part of the building, and also rates per square foot for the car wash part of the building on the far right. So now going into page 6, that we're speaking about subject property once again. So there is a store kiosk of 1,182 square feet, which we rate at $35.12 per square foot. We also provide vacancy loss of account for a vacancy loss of 2%, 2% of expenses, and shortfall of $6 per square foot, as well as capitalization rate of $6.3%. So the estimated value for that for income stream number 1 is $631,000. For income stream number 2 on page 7, it's VCW, which is vehicle car wash. Leasable area there is 7,048 square feet at $8.25 per square foot. Potential rate $58,146,000. Vacancy loss at 2%, expenses at 2%, and shortfall at $4.50 per square foot, and overall capitalization rate of 6.55%, as well as additional buildings at $299,000. Provide an estimated value of $1,142,000 for the vehicle car wash. And page number 8 provides an income value summary with combined income streams for income stream 1 and 2, with blended capitalization rate of 6.4% and blended shortfall rate of $4.71, with total estimated market value of $1,773,000. Page 9 provides some adjustments for detached structures and how much of it, and it was mentioned that $299,000 was added to income stream for gas tanks and fuel pumps. Page 9 gives us a breakdown in capitalization rates, and this is the way where they are, and for overall, the range of the capitalization rate would range, where it would range at, column 1 would show us where the city's capitalization rates are, and last 3 columns, Collier's, CBRE, and the Cushman and Wakefield's capitalization rates are, and the capitalization rate that is used falls within the range. Page 11 provides some excerpts of the Municipal Assessment Act, and further pages provide income and expense mailer submitted by the property owner, in which says it's a fully owner-occupied building. And with that, provides expense section of it, but doesn't provide any rate per square foot. Page 10 forward is a fresh look where that explains why City of Winnipeg that provides evidence on our capitalization rate. Going into page 19, where the studies have been made, and for example, office capitalization rates for those buildings provided there provides the capitalization rates on the buildings that have been sold. As well as page 20 provides evidence on the expense study ratio where it shows that overall 1.06% is the median median value that or percentage that has been used for the that has been provided as evidence based on that has been provided as evidence for the expense ratio, expense percentage there. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Yes, thank you. Now I'll ask some questions that are generally related to gas bars, and then I'll ask that carry forward to the sake of expediency.
Go ahead.
Okay, so 2146 St. Mary's Road. Now, just so we're all clear, when we are looking at the income valuation of gas bars, the way that the city approaches this exercise is to remove the pumps, tanks, and canopies and provide a replacement cost adjustment. Is that correct?
Could you please repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're looking at a gas bar or gas station, we are removing the depreciated costs. We're removing the pumps, the tanks, and the canopies, effectively everything that makes a gas bar, and then we're adding that adjustment and valuing the bricks and mortar retail component. Is that correct?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by removing that.
Well, you've got an adjustment here in your valuation summary, correct?
Correct.
And what does that comprise of?
Yeah, well, it's comprised of area used for, I guess, storefront for a kiosk.
No. It's a replacement cost adjustment for the replacement cost of the pumps, tanks, and canopies.
Okay, so you are talking about
The adjustment.
The adjustment only, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's a depreciated cost.
Right, so it's called a replacement cost, it's depreciated based on Marshall and Swift in an age life table, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so once we remove the pumps, tanks, and canopies, we were effectively left with either just a convenience store or a convenience store with potentially a car wash attached to it. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, just so we're all on the same page. Now, what's interesting is gas bars would be a specific subset of retail, would you agree? They're a type of retail venture, but they're their own unique properties, are they not?
Yes.
Okay, and would you say that they carry more or less risk than a traditional retail store?
I would say that you cannot compare it in a way that you have done, whether they carry more or less risk. Just because they're typically a retail, but they're not quite the same.
Okay, so in a typical retail environment, we probably have shorter hours, can we agree on that? There's more wear and tear on gas stations than there are on traditional retail buildings, would you agree
I
with
would
that?
not agree on that.
You wouldn't, okay, that's fine. Now, let's leave the business side out, that's.
And actually, I will take it a bit further that gas bars, there's more foot traffic in the retail stores.
More foot traffic. You recognize that the gas station business operates on a razor-thin margin, and it's all about volume. Are you correct? Are you aware of that? We're not talking about the business in place, the going concern value, but to an owner, this is a volume business.
Why don't
that-
you put that stuff
I
into
will,
your
absolutely.
presentation
Yeah,
rather than
yeah,
asking
not a
more
problem.
questions, okay? Let's-
That's fine, okay.
Let's move
Now,
on.
just to move along, there's an increased risk of contamination. Would you agree with that?
Could you please elaborate on contamination?
Sure, you're putting large tanks full of gasoline into the ground, and traditionally, there's an increased risk of contamination and an increased risk of cost of remediation later on in the property's lifespan. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, now, let's see here. This building is built in 1989, and the effective age is 89. Now, would it be fair to say that this is an older iteration of the Shell stores?
I cannot comment on, I would not comment on that, whether it's an older or not. I'll just state to the fact that it is 1989.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Now, in terms of your rent comps, we have a variety here. We've got anything from 100 square feet up to 2,000 square feet. Now, I guess my question is, for the sake of brevity, are these all contract rents or are some of these book rents?
Give me a second. Well, they're all net rents, right? Like all the values here, they're net rents.
Are they contract rents or are they book rents?
Could you please, I guess I cannot answer the question whether they are, which ones they are.
All right, and now I can't help but note, you have a note here, and it says this gas station rent is historical, and gas station was demolished in 2015. So why has this been included?
Okay, so let's take a look at it. That relates to comparable number 3.
Yeah.
And let's look at it. Comparable number 3 there provides a lease started of 2012. So that was a historic, like since 2015, the gas station was destroyed. However, it provides a rate per square foot of what that gas station was, rented at before it was destroyed.
Okay. All right, now, and then comp 11, are you aware that that property's been fully redeveloped? It's actually 1,685 square feet. And so these numbers are inaccurate. I'm suggesting that, have you checked these rent comps? Have you inspected them?
I have not inspected
Okay,
them,
that's
but
fine.
I can, but in 1995, for Camp 11, 580 square feet was rented at 137,000.
In 1995. Okay.
Well, we started in 1995.
All right, so let's go to page 6. This is the car wash. Are all of these inputs modeled?
Yes, they are.
Okay, now, just a question about shortfalls as it relates to gas stations. Would you agree that the shortfall that, I'm using 6, you're using 4.5, would you agree that we're both far below what the actual shortfall is, just simply based on property taxes alone? Wouldn't
I
cover the
cannot
shortfall.
agree to that.
You don't agree to that? Would you agree that gas stations tend to have large amounts of land, and they need it to run their business, generally? They have a higher land-to-building ratio than a standard convenience store. Would you agree with that?
Well, how is that relevant?
It's relevant because the assessments are extremely high, so the property tax alone doesn't cover a $4.50 per square foot shortfall. That's what I'm suggesting. Okay. You've got a cap rate here of 5.4% on the car wash, but you've got a cap rate of 6.3 on the store. Now, they're connected, are they not? These two buildings?
Where do you see 5? Sorry.
On your page 6, you've got a 5.4% cap rate on the car wash.
6.3.
He does, that's 6.3.
You have a car wash? Oh, I'm sorry.
Or 6.55
Sorry, I'm losing my
on
other
the
questions.
car
I'm
wash.
sorry.
6.55 on the
Six
car wash.
point 3.0 on the car wash, I'm going to do it in file, and, just I have my questions here, and 6.55, but these buildings are connected, the car wash is connected to the store, correct?
Correct.
So do you think that it's logical to have two different cap rates on this single economic unit?
The way it's broken down is VCWs and storefront. They get they're modeled in because it is modeled garage, right? So they have different risk levels, and that's why model provides different rates per square, different cap rates for them. But the blended rate per square, blended cap rate is 6.44 on the page number here.
Okay. All right, now to page 9, this is where we talk about the detached structures. This is the replacement cost.
Yes.
Now, I couldn't help but notice that the depreciation cost, or the adjustment, is risen 30% on this property from the last cycle. Does that
Yes.
seem logical to you?
It is my understanding that there were, in the previous cycle, an improper depreciation rate was used, so it was corrected. That's why the number is different this time around.
We can agree that it was improper, but I think we're gonna say that it went the other way. So Marshall and Swift uses a 30-year lifespan, 80% depreciation table. Is that correct? Marshall and Swift being the industry standard for replacement costs.
I would say so, yes.
Okay, and in the previous cycle, the city was using, they capped the depreciation at 50%, is that correct?
Correct.
And this year, we're using,
30 again.
I'm sorry?
I believe it went back to 30.
Okay, and is that supported by anything in the market or any underlying postulate evaluation theory as it relates to cost?
Well, it's supported by the studies done by Marshall and Swift.
Okay, so, but you're suggesting that the pumps, tanks, and canopies have appreciated in value by 30%?
Well, if it were improperly calculated in the first place, then yes, the depreciated value can be changed and corrected, and yes, it can be corrected.
But so we're clear, Marshall and Swift, the industry standard would say 80%. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
Marshall and Swift, that's the industry standard for cost replacement, would say 80% is the appropriate depreciation.
I believe it was 30.
You believe?
I believe it was 30, but I don't have the Marshall and Swift with me to.
30 years, 80%. Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Neil?
Okay, just in terms of the car wash, there's broadly two types. There's the drive-through one, which may or may not be touchless. And then there's the kind of wand washer ones. The wand washer ones obviously have to be, usually are bigger. They got even more bays, usually several bays. Which type is this?
I cannot answer. I don't know exactly which type of car wash this one is.
Would that affect the rental rate?
Again, to my knowledge, I don't think it affects the rental rate for the car wash, because if it's a car wash, the model code is DCW, and I don't think it
Okay,
goes
but,
any
I mean,
further.
it's too, like say, if you get a wand washer, you usually have, I don't know, a number of bays, as many as, I've seen as many as 7 or 8, versus the one standalone mechanical car wash, you might call it, that has got a much lower square footage. Put few, but on the other hand, you put probably fewer cars through there in an hour.
It all depends, right? Because with mechanical ones, they are smaller and they operate differently. In a way, the vehicle is washed, wand washes. On the other hand, I guess it's vehicle is being washed by the vehicle owner. So in a way, the way city accounts for it is they take the building. If it's a car wash, it's a car wash, and that's how it is being looked at by the model.
Okay. Now, in your cap rate, what cap rate did you use a retail cap rate on these?
I believe that's what they are going for. I cannot tell you exactly which cap rate was used there. I would assume it was I cannot tell you exactly which cap rate was, whether it was retail or industrial or office. I can't tell you exactly.
Okay. All right, so I have no more questions.
Lynn,
I have no questions.
when you're talking 8,200 square feet gross floor area, is that just the building for the car wash and the store?
Yes.
You got, did they replot this? I gotta ask the question. Because you've got 30,990 square feet.
They did, like, you mean, there was a multi-family building that was built, right?
It was replotted when they took the other piece off the back.
Yeah.
Did they replot it and come up with 30,990?
I believe the square footage is, parcel size is accurate to its current size.
Yeah. Just doesn't look like you get 3 of those stores on that property. If you're looking at, how would you put 3 of those stores on that piece of property? And if you did, that'd be only about 15,000 square feet, wouldn't it? Maybe 20?
Yeah, I cannot tell you right now whether it's, like there's some back areas, it's a regular shaped lot, right, so.
But it can still be measured, even though it's irregular.
I know, but I cannot measure it right now by just looking at it and then tell you whether everything fits there or not, but yeah.
So you've got nothing in your records about it being replotted at any time?
Let's take a look.
Sorry about that. Because you've got a plan area 3.77. Pretty good plan area, isn't it?
Well, I would say, at this point, I would have to say that the area is represented is 30,990. I do not have any other information as to say it otherwise.
Here, you see what the appellant comes up with. When you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay. 2146 St. Mary's Road in St. Patel, as we've established, we've got a quite an irregular parcel of land here, and that is based on the fact that the land behind it was developed residential. This is an older iteration of the shell stores. The first indication is the signage. The question with the car wash has come up. It is a coin-operated wand wash, so it's the kind where you drive in and you put the coin in and you do it yourself. Okay, so the year built is 1989. And again, no substantial improvements. The assessment department is suggesting an assessment of $1,773,000. I'm suggesting that $1,246,000 is more appropriate. Just to orient ourselves, we are in the intersection of St. Mary's and Van Hall Way. Again, this is St. Patel. The gas bar is 1,182 square feet. Or, I'm sorry, the convenience store. Now, the gas bar has been removed from the equation and has been adjusted for in the replacement cost. And we have again, the car wash that's 7,048 square feet. The city is suggesting a site size of 30,990 square feet, which would lead to a land to plan ratio of 3.7, which I don't personally believe to be correct. I haven't measured it, and it's certainly not usable based on its irregular shape. And I will suggest too that even a land to plan for a typical gas station of 5 or 6 to 1 is even a little bit small, quite frankly. These operations tend to take a great deal of space. Now, I referenced the old signage. You can see it on page 4 of my brief. This is an older iteration of the shell stores. Okay, so in terms of coming to a market rent, and I apologize, I've got a glitch here where my Main Street, my Anderson location entered twice, so I took them out and recalculated it. I come to an average as opposed to 2366 and a 2318. It's effectively immaterial, but I am going to use a rate of $25 per square foot. We tend to use something in the range of 25 to 30, depending on the quality, the location. Rents are generally generated by capacity for literage in these businesses, but we're not looking at the going concern value of the business. We're talking about this convenience store as a retail enterprise, so we believe that somewhere in the range of $25 to $30, that's what we'll see here today, is generally reasonable. Now, I do remark that the city has suggested that the depreciation adjustment has risen from 234,000 in the last cycle to 299. So we have Marshall and Swift certified experts in our office, and we've done a quick calculation. We suggest that based on how Marshall and Swift calculates depreciation, that there should be no more, I believe this to be Gary's on some level, of 5% over the last cycle. So we have used that across the board. We don't believe that there's anything in valuation theory that would suggest that we ought to use 50% or 35%. We think Marshall and Swift are saying 80%, and we defer to their expertise. This is my page 8. So below that, I have just some rents of generally standalone car washes. Though on Mandalay, we do have a little. We've got 2 gas pumps. That's a Tempo. It's in Maples. So we're accepting the $8.50 per square foot for the car wash section, and that's, we're generally seeing rents of $7.50 to $10. We're generally okay with that. Now the vacancy, we're using a 5% vacancy here, and I believe for most of these files that we'll see today that are gas stations, convenience stores, and car washes. Now the question always comes up: well, aren't these always? Isn't there no vacancy in car washes? But the tendency is that's correct, but over the lifespan of a car wash, if it does go vacant, it tends to be vacant for a long time. So 5% stabilized over the economic life of the asset seems to be reasonable, and that's what we've used. Again, I said in my cross-examination, $4.50 per square foot shortfall is too low. If we use the actual, it would be likely to be distorted, so we use $6, recognizing that $4.50 is too low. We try and stabilize that at $6, but again, the property tax component alone would outpace that. So. Now, you've all heard this. For the purposes of these reports today, we will continue to apply the 7% erosion to the effective gross income, with 2% being allotted to the structural reserve, and 5% as a stabilized allowance for non-recoverable expenses, and we maintain that these arise in the competent management and operation of the property and are essential to subtending the effective gross income. Now, the assessor is using capitalization rates of 6.55 and 6.3. We don't see these as separate economic units, and we certainly don't see them as separate income streams. We see that the market view would be to use one cap rate across the entirety of this property, and I will say that we start with the retail cap rate, and then we have to adjust up because there are increased risks for gas stations. So we feel that a rate of 7.5% is more indicative, and with all those points taken into consideration, we come to a value on the car wash of $656,768. We come to a value on the convenience store, the 1,200 square foot convenience store of $343,371, and we do add the adjustment that I mentioned of $245,700, bringing us to an indicated market value at the reference date of $1,245,839, rounded to $1,246,000. And we submit that respectfully that we ask that the board adjust that value for this cycle. I've got some photos at the back for your perusal. I'll leave that with you. Barring any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Ark, any questions?
All right, well, yes, have you inspected the site?
No, just a desktop review.
So you mentioned you did touch about something about the site area, but you do not believe that it is to be the truth, but you haven't done any further study.
I've done a desktop review where I can see that you, as the chair rightly pointed out, you couldn't fit 3 or 4 of these into this site, and we do know that it has been it was carved up for residential development right behind it. So, and we're not valuing the land, so it's immaterial.
But if you are to add or subtract, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. None of us, I didn't review and you didn't review the exact site area, correct?
I'm sorry.
You did not review the site area, so.
Yes, I did a desktop review. I didn't measure it because it's not material to this exercise. We can see that it's got a small land
So yes,
plan.
my point is, let's in the summary stated 30,990 square feet. Would you agree that that's what you have stated in your summary on
I'm
page 2?
saying that the city of Winnipeg's records are indicating that. We're not, not measured it, nor are we valuing this based on land, so I'm not really sure where we're talking about lands area.
Okay, as far as the rates per square foot so the comparables you have provided. Are those all gas stations with the car washes?
Well, some have car washes and some don't, yeah. There's 5 of them. But what you will notice is the one on Lakewood, we've got 2 different inputs for it, and that's the car wash and the gas station. You can see quite clearly there that we don't have different rates on the car wash. We would treat, the market sees these as single economic units. You don't pay a different rate for the car wash, and what it nets out to is about $21, $23 per square foot, which is bang on.
Okay. So you have two, I guess, on page 8 you have 2 types of comparables. One is obviously a car wash at the bottom, and the one in the middle of the page, is that purely a convenience store, or is it convenience store and the car wash?
I'm sorry.
I guess least comparable information on page 8 of your report.
Yeah. What's your question?
Are those purely, so the first 7 in the middle of the page with average of 23.66 and median of 24.52,
Yeah.
are those comparables purely convenience stores, or are they convenience store and the car wash?
McPhillips, 1425 McPhillips, I don't believe has a car wash. Main Street does, and Lakewood, we have them separated out to show you that the lease is the same. Now, I mentioned in my presentation that 6 and 7 ought to be omitted. That's an error on my part, and I've recalculated. The average is 2318, median being 2310.
So you say, 2544 comparable number 1 is a car wash and the convenience store, correct?
Yes, I believe that to be true. That's out by Riverbend. Yeah.
So is the square footage there, says 3,512, is it convenience store only, or is it convenience store? It is both, so rate per square foot at 24.52 consists of both convenience store and the car wash, correct?
That's correct, because the market uses one rate across the entirety of these properties.
Yet you separate them and you apply them differently, correct?
Separate and apply them differently. Well, yeah, to come to a blended rate, yeah, that's what we tend to do, and again, that's how we get to that.
So would you agree that if you are to separate comparable number 1 on your report, the storefront would be higher than $24.52 and the car wash would be at a lower rate?
Okay, so standalone car washes are reasonably rare, right? And they come in at about a rate $7.50, $7.75, somewhere in there, maybe up to $10, okay, for the newer kind of stuff. Now the gas stations, sure, for the new product, you go up to $30, and that's why I'm saying we've got a rate here that shows you the gas bar universe, and we adjust it. So we say for the older product like this one, we say 25 is fine, 28 for what we call the middling, and then 30 and higher. Clearly, we don't have any that are brand new here, but we can go up to 35, 32, something like that. So this is what the market is indicating to us.
All right. So if comparable number 1 in your report and it consists of car wash and the convenience store and blended rate is 24.52, would it be fair to say that if we are to use 24.52 blended rate against the entire 8,230 square feet of the subject property, would
The subject property is 7,000 square feet of car wash.
exactly? But comparable number 1 also, 24.52 is a blended rate of car wash and convenience store. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So
using
it
one
is
rate
safe to
across
assume
both.
that we can apply 24.52 in the same manner, blended rate against subject property's total square footage.
I used $25 a square foot for the gas bar portion, and I've used $8 or $8.50.
But
for
you
the car
didn't,
wash.
but you didn't break it down in your comparable reports. The square
Yes, it
footage
did.
you provided, no, the square footage for comparable number one.
Take a look.
On the bottom pages, he's got the car wash.
I got it all broken out.
I understand, but comparable number one, 2544 Main Street, has a car wash and a gas station, correct? And this convenience store, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And the total area of 3,512 is consists of car wash and convenience store, correct?
That's right, yeah,
So the blended rate is 2452.
right.
So it would be proper, safe to apply blended rate of 2452 against the entire square footage of subject property, correct?
Just something here that explains me too. The subject property, we've got 11, here's the thing, we're dealing with retail, the bricks and mortar retail, okay? We've got a car wash that comprises 7,000 square feet, okay? And we both agreed that car washes are at a lower rate in the open market. And that's the difficulty here of this entire exercise of valuing gas stations, because we're suspending disbelief and saying that the going concern value of the business doesn't have anything to do with the realty assessment, and that's the challenge. Now, if we are to take that approach, which we've both done, we've taken the income approach, we're separating the car wash from the kiosk, right, the convenience store. And then we've also further separated out the pumps, tanks, and canopies. So you're saying, I don't think we're arguing the value of the car wash here. We have to recognize it's the majority of this building is the car wash, right? You're not gonna apply the retail convenience rate to the car wash, is that what you're suggesting?
But you're applying car wash rate to a retail convenience within your comparable number one.
No, I'm showing you that this building has a blended rate of $23. That's what I'm showing you.
So a blended rate of $23 also should be applied in the subject property purposes too?
No, I
If
don't-
we are blending the rates, right? Otherwise,
No, I think we'll just agree to disagree. Let's see what we say.
I don't have any other questions.
Good. I'm glad you agreed to disagree. No questions? Question?
I guess the question I have, it's not clear to me how you're valuing the pumps and canopy. Are you simply taking the old
Yeah,
Marshall and Swift and increasing it by 5%?
5%, yeah.
Or did you do a separate Marshall and Swift?
No, we didn't do a separate Marshall and Swift. We thought the last iteration was reasonable, and then we calculated again as to how it should have moved from the last cycle to this cycle. And we see that it goes anywhere from 3 to 7%, so we stabilized at 5%, and we've used that
Okay, but
across.
now the assessor has said an error was made in the calculation last time.
Well, what he's suggesting is, so this is, there's been a number of changes at this assessment cycle from the city. The market for Marshall and Swift uses something called an 80-30 table, so it's a 30-year lifespan for most of these assets, with a depreciation that caps at 80%. So you stop depreciating it once it loses 80% of its value effectively. It's a, I don't believe it's a straight line depreciation, but it's an age-linked depreciation. The city used to use 50%. I've got it in one of my other briefs. I can show you how it kind of nets out. But the city used to cap the depreciated cost at 50%. Now they're saying 35 or 36%, and I'm suggesting that that's not supported by anything in the market. That's just that's a policy change with the city of Winnipeg. But there's no change in the market that would indicate that's reasonable.
Okay, so then shouldn't that argue then for you doing a separate Marshall and Swift
Yeah,
evaluation?
and yes, absolutely, and this is something that, just kind of perked our ears up when we started to see these depreciation costs. We hadn't generally appealed we just kind of accepted them in the past because they seemed reasonable, but then when we see that the depreciation costs are increasing by 30, sometimes 40% in some of these cases, that made us say, wait a minute, there's something off here. So we did our own calculation and said, okay, well, across the board, these pumps, tanks, and canopies ought not to be increasing by more than 5% from the last cycle. So that's what we've done. We've adjusted it, but it's certainly unreasonable to assume that they would increase by 30%.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question on your cap rate.
Sure.
do you mind?
Yeah.
You cite that you say your study, the Altus Rate Cap Rate Study,
Absolutely.
did that study have a section on car washes?
No, we don't have car washes, and quite honestly, I think as we go forward, we might look to create a separate cap study that has just to do with, these kind of properties. One of the issues is we see a lot of owner-occupied properties, we don't see a lot of sales. So and the approach to these is the income approach. So once we're taking those pump tanks and canopies out, we're left with effectively a 7-Eleven or a Mac store, and that's kind of how we view it, even though the $20, $25, $30 rents are pretty high in that universe. That's sort of how we've looked at it. Now, I do cite that there is an increased risk of gas bars. We've got, the business component has its own risks, but the risk to the owner in terms of potential contamination or remediation, now granted, that's more of a risk in the older properties. Anything built past, I would say, I believe 1998 or 2000 or so, is probably remediable by, without excessive costs. But the older product, there may be issues there. So there's that issue. There's also the fact that the hours are late. The wear and tear on these buildings is much higher than it would be in a standard retail space, probably more equivalent to a 7-Eleven. So we do look to a higher cap rate than we would maybe look to in a retail equivalent, but that's the nature of gas stations, I believe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next item, which will be 190 St. Anne's Road.
Can I summarize?
Huh?
Summary?
Oh, you want to do some, I'm sorry, sure, go ahead.
All right. So, for a quick summary, we've discussed things about car washes and convenience stores and depreciation rates. Just to make a point, subject property has a potential rate of $99,658, which comes to a blended rate of $12.11. It has been established that some of the comparables that the appellant used, for example, comparable number 1 on page 8 of the report, 2544 Main Street, has a blended rate of $24.52. So with that, I believe that the city's rate that per square foot overall is very appropriate given the as it relates to subject property. As far as capitalization rates goes, the studies have been on page number 10, as well as where am I? As well as expenses studies. The city has provided on page 20, 29 examples of studies of the expense ratio where median is 1.06%. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
I will say that, yes, very quick. What you just said is not correct. The inputs that you're speaking of have nothing to do with gas stations. We start from a retail perspective and then we adjust. And I will suggest too that you were not able to say that you looked at your comps and we have historical rates. We were all over the place in terms of rents. So I would suggest that what you submitted here today does not represent a market view of gas stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next property and see if we can speed it a little bit.
Yep.
190 St. Anne's Road. Not that I'm rushing anybody.
But you're rushing me.
When you're ready, Arka.
Okay, subject property, file number 194092, roll number 0800173000, 190 St. Anne's Road, owner is Red River Cooperative Limited. 2020 assessment year, April 1st, 2018, reference date, assessed value $1,474,000. Parcel use code is vehicle service related. There's C2 zoning, land area 16,252 square feet, plan area 2,724 square feet. The recommendation is to maintain the assessed value at $1,474,000. Again, page 2 provides the aerial view of the subject property. Subject property is on St. Anne Road, just north of Fairmore, right across from the superstore retail. Page 4 provides basic information on income and expense information, subject sale history, which there are none. Page 5 provides pad side rent comparables for similar type of properties like gas stations, which consist of convenience stores and car washes. On page 6 we have income stream number 1, 958 square feet leasable area at $10.41, vehicle car wash. With potential rate of 9,973 square feet, $9,973. 2% vacancy loss is applied as well as 2% expenses, $4.58 per square foot shortfall, and a 5.4% capitalization. Estimated value for income stream number 1 is $176,000. Income stream number 2 is a convenience store kiosk. Leasable area 1,766 square feet at $35.36 per square foot. Potential rent $62,446,000. Again, vacancy loss at 2%, expenses at 2%, shortfall at $6, capitalization rate of 6.3%. Provide capitalized value of $948,587 and $649,000 of additional building value. Provide total estimated value for income stream number 2 at $1,298,000. Overall value is capitalization rate at 6.16% and shortfall dollar amount at 5.47 blended shortfall rate, and total estimated market value at $1,474,000. Page 9 provides specifics of the additional structures that were added to income stream. Page 10 provides capitalization rate, we've covered it already. 11 is experts of the Municipal Assessment Act. Page 12 is income and expense waiver provided by the property owner, which states that it's a fully owned or occupied building. Okay, and further on is a fresh look for the 2020 assessment, with page 17 providing capitalization rate studies done by the city, and page 18 providing the expense rate studies done by the city with a median at 1.06%. That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Okay, all right, now, you mentioned this is across from the Superstore, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the Superstore has their own gas bar, don't they? Pardon me?
Yes.
Okay, and you're aware that Loblaws own Superstore, and they divested of all of their gas bars in 2017, are you aware of that? Yep. Okay, so it's now run as a mobile gas store, but it maintains the PC Optimum point system. Okay, so this is Class D construction, that's typical of these assets, is that correct?
Oh, this particular one is a Class D construction, yes.
Okay. All right, so the actual year built is 97 to 2003. Can you tell us about that?
In 2006, there was a permit taken out to construct new wash bays
Okay, so they built the gas station, or sorry, they built the car wash in 2003, and it's attached to the convenience store, is that correct?
Uh, Yes, it is.
Okay, this used to be called Gabe's Auto, is that right? Or Gabe's Service Center? Gabe's.
I'm not sure exactly the historic names for the site.
Is the site on the contaminated list?
Which contaminated list are you talking about?
It's the Conservation and Stewardship's list of impact and contaminated sites, public document.
Yeah, there's, province of Manitoba provides 3 links to contaminated sites. Which one are you? It provides a link to a contaminated sites, then it provides a link to the impacted sites.
And then it has a link to all of the sites.
And all of the sites, I'll tell you, is not, all the sites consists of a lot more properties than just contaminated sites and impacted
Okay,
sites
is it on
together.
the list of the contaminated and impacted sites program?
I'm sure you're gonna tell us.
Do you want me
Okay,
to
it is,
go
I'm just
through
wondering
this?
if you're aware of that, and if you factored that into your opinion. Okay, so you don't know, that's fine. All right, we talked about these comps. I should say about them, that's fine. All right, now you've got the vehicle. Now, I'll ask, these are all modeled inputs, I'm guessing, is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and you've got a 5.4 cap on the car wash, and you've got a 6.3 cap on the kiosk. Do you think that's appropriate?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and we've talked about the city's, the reconciled depreciation cost. You recognize that there's a 40% increase on the depreciated cost of the pumps, tanks, and canopies of this asset over the last cycle.
Okay, so the answer is similar to what it was before, right?
But if it's 20% year over year, that's a pretty good investment, isn't it? Doesn't seem
Well,
typical.
I believe it was a one-time correction. And
Okay. All right, so it's a policy change, that's fine, those are my questions.
Do you have any questions? Sure.
Not on this site.
Lynn?
Nope.
No, neither do I. Let's move on to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Okay, 190 St. Anne's Road again, former Gabe's Auto, which is a lean impacted and contaminated sites list. The city is suggesting a value of $1,474,000. We're suggesting $981,000 for the reasons contained within this group. So, this is the southwest corner of the intersection of St. Anne's Road and Crystal Avenue. This is called the Berenz Avenue neighborhood in St. Patel. And we can best describe this asset as a gas station with a convenience store and car wash. The convenience store is 1,766 square feet, and it was constructed with the gas bar in 1997. And the balance of that accessible or leasable square footage is 958, which is the car wash. Okay, so we do remark that it is right across the street from a large real Canadian superstore, which includes its own gas bar and convenience store. Okay. Now, in terms of this, I have mentioned it's actually a very small site when you see it. Okay, so again, we've used the same inputs. We come to the average of, average and median is in around that $23 range. For this asset, we do recognize that it's newer than the last one we looked at, so we're at $28 a square foot. And I did misspeak there. I on Main Street, I was thinking of the wrong gas bar. This is the Esso and Max. It is in Riverbend, but it's the Esso and Max. That stretch of Main Street. The second one is the Northgate Petrocan. That has a detached car wash. Number 3 is Henderson. It's called a Domo Dash store. So that's a larger Domo. Okay, and then number 4, of course, is a Shell and Lakewood. Okay, now I I pulled this last night. I just thought it was interesting for the reconciled value. This is from last year, using 50% depreciation. Now, what's interesting is the assessment department has left the 80% depreciation suggested by Marshall and Swift into some of the non-applied parts like the paving and the asphalt. You can see it's 80%. Last year was 50% for the pumps, tanks, and canopies, and now we're 35%. Not to belabor the point, but I did want to point out that it does make a material difference when we adjust it. That's what I would call acceptable market parameters. Okay, so we are applying a vacancy allowance of 5%, as is our methodology, as it relates to the gas stations. And again, the city is using a model 450 per square foot for the shortfall. We're suggesting $6 is low, but more reasonable. Okay. All right, and again, for the number of reasons we've talked about for cap rates, we're applying a rate of 7%. So with all these factors taken into consideration, we are suggesting that the car wash portion of this assessment ought to be valued at $98,671. The convenience store at $616,536, and the adjustment should not exceed $265,650, bringing us to an indicated market value of the reference date of $980,856, rounded to $981,000, and we submit that the board adjust its value for this site. Barring any questions, that's my presentation. I will point out I have the front of this page, but if for some reason my back page didn't attach, but I do have the contaminated list, the relevant section that shows the former Dave's Auto, so I don't believe that's in dispute. But
Good.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Arca, questions?
All right. You have mentioned contaminated sites. Exactly. If a property is on the contaminated site list, how do they get there and why is it on the contaminated site list?
Okay, so the way that we start with the contaminated site list is we have something called an ESA, which is an environmental analysis of the property. There's 3 stages. The first stage is we look at the history of the property and we make a judgment. We say, is it likely that this property would be impacted? That's all it takes in phase 1. We look at historical records, we look at old photos, we consider the past use. So most properties that are potentially impacted or contaminated are not on the site list because they've never been tested. In the second phase of the ESA, we do what are called boring tests. So we take some of the soil and we check it to see what the makeup is and if that is indeed impacted or contaminated. The third phase is to determine a plan for remediation, and that includes costs. Does that answer your question?
So, yes, first of all, based on and I would like to introduce rebuttal evidence regarding contaminated sites.
Thanks.
So what has been introduced is a list of sites, and I specifically pulled only when it designated impact sites and contaminated sites, and designated contaminated sites and designated impacted sites. On the main page of the website. Okay, so if a property is on the list of all sites, and the appellant mentioned that subject properties are on the list of all sites, and they're not specifically on the contaminated sites list or impacted site list. This list, I'm reading it right here.
Yeah.
This list is of the sites where some type of information has been submitted to the department.
Take a candy, or we'll get a glass of water.
Yeah.
Before you
I'll
die
grab
on us.
some water too.
Or you're dying here.
You're dying on us here.
So, file has been created. This can include sites where impacts do not pose a concern, remediation has been completed, or further action is necessary. So it's a wide range of properties. And my question, with that being said, my second question to you. Typically, vehicles, and this probably would go to all of the properties on the record if necessary. I'll speak to it in a way that typically we're dealing with gas stations today and vehicle service garages. Typically, those type of properties are generally contaminated. And my question to you, when a property is a gas station, or when a property is a vehicle service garage, being on the list, do you think it will affect the leasability of the property?
I think that it'll affect the next potential use. It limits the uses. You can't build an apartment buildings without remediating it. And just, I don't want to get into the weeds on contamination of impacted sites. I haven't made any adjustments. I'm just pointing out that it is on the list.
Yeah, but there is no adjustment, and I would, if you would agree with me to expedite, I think we should just drop the point of contaminated sites because it's irrelevant.
I don't think it's a positive to be on the contaminated or impacted sites.
But we are dealing with the gas stations to begin with, correct?
The gas station.
I think you've both made your points, and we will take it under consideration as we see fit. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's move on to the, are we done the questioning?
Yeah.
No, you were asking questions. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Right.
Continue to ask questions. I don't want to cut you off.
No, I think we've made the point, and I'm done with my question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
No, I have no questions. That was my question. I was going to ask about contaminated sites,
Perfect.
so
Neil?
that answered it.
Yeah, no questions.
Your question's been answered, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's move on to 510 Provencher Boulevard. You gonna make it through today?
I don't know.
Oh, boy.
Better phone for help.
911. We all
Just when you had all the help that was here and they went.
Yeah, they all- You could have gotten any one of them to stay for you. Maybe we'll listen.
Sorry, are we on the next property now, or?
Yeah, we are. We're on
Okay.
510 Provencher. When you're ready, Arthur.
Okay, I have the
I'll say it again.
So, just give me 1 second, I
The
will.
next one. Oh, yeah, no,
First
no,
one.
no, no.
Okay. So with the 510 Provencher, Mr. Chairman, typically with this type of hearings in commercial section, do we address preliminary issues first, such as a request?
Yes, but
that
you
the-
still read you read on the information, just
Okay.
file number and the roll number, please. And then give me the information on why you're asking for burden of proof.
So file number 191820, roll number 0605 0101 The preliminary issue is that we are requesting the burden of proof to be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation per section 53(3)(b) of the Municipal Assessment Act, and if a reduction in the assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54(3.2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. On page on page 10 of my report, we have information that a property owner sent an email on May 3rd to the department requesting an extension for submission of income and expense information. On page 11, you see the response from the department where they have on page 11 is an email stated, please see your extension letter, and page 12 states provide the extension letter that the extension was granted until June 29, 2018. There was no response back by the property owner with any further correspondence or income expenses information. Based on that, I would like to ask the board to place the burden of proof on the applicant for non-declaration per section 53(3)(b), as well as if a reduction in the assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54, 3.2 of the municipal assessment act. Thank you.
Want to speak to the issue?
Sure, yeah, briefly. Now, I read the email, and they say that they're having asbestos checks to see if the building is viable, and if it's not, they're gonna demolish the buildings, is that correct? Mr. Lambert wrote to Ms. Massey, said we're having asbestos checks, and we're gonna apply for demolition permits, right?
Okay, yeah, that's what it says in the email.
So would it have been helpful to you if there's no incoming property, so what would they have reported to you?
A response back stating what it is.
Oh, they
He did respond back.
Yeah, and then,
How?
There has been, for the prior year, any business being transacted on this property.
they're telling you there's no income.
He said it right in his email.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will tell you, I was there with a colleague, we were out for a drive, and we went by the property, and there's Emery construction, or demolition fencing. There's clearly a demolition permit. Now, you would imagine, if you were an owner, you would say, well, we've applied for a demolition permit, it's been granted. Would that not be in your system? It would seem to me that it seems inappropriate to punish this fellow for telling you that he's demolishing the buildings, getting the demolition permit, and then not sending you a sheet with a big zero on it. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm gonna suggest that penalty not be applied. Thank you.
Any questions, Eric?
Just trying to. But he was asking for an extension.
While they do a review to see if there's asbestos, presumably there's asbestos, because they are demolishing the buildings. He applied for a demolition permit with the city of Winnipeg. I don't think that he knows that he's talking to two different entities. As far as, if I'm an owner, I'm thinking I'm talking to the city of Winnipeg. I said, let me have an extension. He said, yes. Then they apply for demolition permits, they get them. Doesn't that imply to you that there's no income and expense to be reported?
Well, I would say that, I would say to the fact that there are different departments, and typically property owners are aware of different
I don't think
departments.
this constitutes a.
Let's not debate it, we're just gonna put the evidence on and we'll make the decision. That's
So
it,
it's
you
to,
both put your information on, you guys step out for a minute, get us a glass of water or something? Something a little stronger might be better. Call the meeting back to order. Now, we're gonna deny the city's request, Art, you can continue on.
All right, so, okay, yes, I've read the file number, I've read the roll number, so owner is Sturgeon Tire, 1993 Limited, 2020 roll year with reference date of April 1st, 2018, assessed value is $279,000. So it's, I guess, 14,909 square feet land area, 1,612 square feet building area. 2020 assessment is $279,000, and I would ask the board to maintain the 2020 assessed value. On page 2, we have images of subject property, and as well as page 3. It's currently a vacant building. Okay. Page 5 and page 4 consists of information on subject sale. There was a 2016 sale of the property for $570,000, but it was a multi-role sale involving a few other properties within the that are rebooted subject property. And page 5 consists of comparable sales. And I just would point out to the panel that I think the best comparables are comparable 19, 21, 22, 35, and 38. Based on the age, they're all older properties, as well as size of the buildings.
Can you repeat which ones you said are the best ops?
19, 21, 22,
Okay. Thank you.
as well as 35 and 38.
Okay.
So on page 6, we have income stream workup of the property, and it's 1,612 square feet at $11.33 per square foot. Potential rate $18,264. Vacancy is at 4%, expenses at 2%, shortfall rate at $4.50. And capitalization rate at 6.05%, gives us an estimated market value of $279,000. There is only one income stream to the subject property. Again, capitalization rates are on page 8, and they range for, I guess, anywhere between 5.5 for the city to 9.8 in the city side for industrial B properties. City is using 6.05 because it's a smaller building, and smaller buildings, based on the specific, based on the sales capitalization rate study, tend to have lower capitalization rates because they are purchased for owner occupancy typically. And I guess going further, we've covered the income and expense, mailer or lack of it. Then page 15 gives us a fresh look, and we've covered it again, and I don't think I should spend time going over. It's been heard many times before, so that's all. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you visited the property?
Drove by it.
You drove by it, okay. And how recently did you drive by it?
Let me guess. Probably, let me guess, a few days ago.
A few days ago, so you did note the construction, or the demolition signage as well as the fencing?
I did not notice that.
I've got some photos here just.
I just drove by it, but,
just these are, speaks to current, present physical condition, we've established that it is being demolished, it's prep for demolition. Okay, so in this case, you noted that you do have you've got an email from, what's the controller? And he's saying that there's, he's saying in May of 18, he's saying that there's no business being transacted. So at what point would you look at land value on something like this?
oh, typically, once it's 100% land value is typically done when it's purely land value. Sometimes the building condition is, I guess, adjusted to the point, but I don't think it is in this case.
You don't think it's land value?
No, I personally, I think it is the land value.
Yeah, at this point it must be because we're demolishing it. Okay, that's fine. Now, so I'm not gonna, let's see, I'm not gonna dig into these rent comps, but I do have a rebuttal, and it looks weighty, but it's actually just a compendium, we've compiled it. I will go through it at length if you'd like, or I could just summarize and say that there are a number of these lease comparisons that are not arm's length. There's about 7 or 8 of them that are inappropriate. We've done a full analysis on it, so I can leave these here for your perusal if you'd like, but I will not belabor it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so, now,
Do you want me to hand it out?
No.
okay, it's there, good, some light reading.
I've seen them under.
Okay, so, that's fine. Now, okay, so it's safe to say everything.
I'll save you
is
some time.
modeled.
Do you have some land cons in there?
No, I don't have land comps, I did it on income, as the city did, but I did a check against land value, and it's right in the ballpark, okay. These are all modeled parameters, I'm guessing, and you didn't overwrite any of them, is that fair? Nope. Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Oh, no, you had done the questions. Do you have any questions? I'm here.
Yeah, oh, thanks, a little bit lower. This has been vacant for, I gather from the email, for some length of time?
I believe so, and actually when I drove by it, I did drove by, but I mixed up my date, so I drove by it a little, probably not a couple of days ago, but a bit earlier in time. So yeah, I noticed it's being vacant. I didn't see the sign, the fencing or whatever, but yeah, the subject property has been vacant.
Okay, then why wouldn't you just value it as vacant, well, first of all, vacant land has been asked, but a vacant property using 25% vacancy rate rather than 4%?
Well, potential.
Cost approach, or the income approach, rather.
Well, subject property is vacant, and it used to be a tire shop in the past. So, not knowing the true reason or why property owner doesn't advertise it as, advertise it for vacant, for rental or whatever, we treat it as average right until other information surfaces.
Okay, thank you.
Permits, I'm sorry, Lynn, you have any questions?
No, I have no question.
When the permits come out, you're gonna do a sup on it once that happens anyway.
Well, once the permit comes out, true, yeah. And I did check on it. I guess permits didn't fully come across to the assessment and taxation department yet. I did see them deeper in PP&D folders, but they didn't come across yet.
So I mean, you didn't get them yet, but you will get them, so.
Exactly.
I've got no other questions.
Very quickly, so we're at 510 Planche, former Curtis Tire. You can see now it came to our attention that this was going to be demolished after we did our analysis. We valued it on income. We come to a value of $140,000. Doing a quick calculation, now I don't have land values to, I can tell you that $10 to $11 a square foot is reasonable in and around this area. If not a bit low, but the site is also contaminated, so there would be some remediation. If you were to go to a different use, if you're gonna use, as we pointed out, if you were to do another tire shop or vehicle related, you might not have to remediate it, but we do know that the building is, does have asbestos, according to the owner, and it's no longer seen as viable. So all we're doing is suggesting that a value of $140,000 is reasonable given the condition, and that's I believe supported by a land value calculation using a sort of quick and dirty numbers as a value check. So we do suggest, I can go through the comps if you'd like. We're using a rent of, potential rent of $8 per square foot on an asset such as this. 4% vacancy, shortfall at $450, non-recovered expenses going to 7%, and an 8% cap rate, and that speaks to, that's probably low given what we know now, but that gives us an indicated market value of $140,292. So again, we asked for a value of $140,000, and that included the photos of the site from this is the reference date. But handed out photos from present physical condition. You can see it's about to be demolished. And we've got the contaminated and impacted site. It recognizes it, and you can also see that they have done environmental assessments on the property to see if it is indeed contaminated or impacted. It would need remediation for going to a higher and better use. So respectfully, we submit that a value of $140,000 is more appropriate for this asset. Thank you.
Questions?
So, my question to you would be, is there, I guess, so such a property is about to be demolished, so we have agreed that it should be a land value.
Well, that's come to our attention now, but, yeah.
And land values typically pose a less of a risk, correct? Vacant land possesses less of a risk as investment than improved property. Would you agree with me on that?
Vacant land is less of a risk than improved property. Well, vacant land is an interim use, right? We're talking about income streams, we're talking about the income approach to value, right?
So with that, I would just ask you if, and the income approach to value as well as vacant land values, but with vacant land being lower risk, shouldn't we use the lower capitalization rates?
No, it's not yet bare land. I did a calculation to say what is as a check against my value of the income approach, which is what we're doing. So we're using the income approach, quite frankly, an 8% cap rate on a building that's about to be torn down is probably low. But that's what we've used, and I'll stand by it, so I think $140,000 is reasonable for this property. It certainly should not have gone up from the last cycle, as the city's suggesting, to say that.
I guess I don't have any other questions.
Lynn?
No, I have no questions, thank you.
I have nothing. No questions.
And I've got no questions. Let's move on to the next property, shall we? 260 Goulet. When you are ready, Arca?
So, subject property, file number 192895, roll number 060930686000, 260 Goulet Street, owner is Snowcat Property Holdings Limited, 2020 assessment year and reference date of April 1st, 2018, assessed value $1,667,000, 2003 year build, newer building, land area 12,104 square feet, plan area 416 square feet. Okay, so C2 zoning, the recommendation is to maintain value, assessed value of $1,667,000. Okay, and as usual, following two pages consist of, show us a picture of the such a property. It's located on Goulet, right next to the Safeway store there, and it's a Shell gas station, which is actually, I believe it's owned by the Safeway, operated by the Safeway, I'm sorry. All right. So, page 4 consists of a 2013 sale with a sworn value of $12,700,000. That was, again, multi-role sale, which included the Safeway store, I believe, at that time. We have, page 5 provides a list of comparable properties of gas station type properties, and in this case it's a store kiosk, store, convenience store only, so SKP properties only, no car washes involved. Page 6, income stream breakdown for 116 square feet at $204.26. Potential rent $84,972,000. Vacancy at 2%, expenses at 2%, shortfall rate at $6 per square foot, and capitalization rate at 6.15%, and additional buildings at $341,000. Give us an estimated value of $1,667,000. Page 7 is basically same as what I just read you on page 6. Page 8 provides information where the additional building value came from, and those are the highlighted parts that were added to the income stream. Again, page 9 is comparable, page 9 is the capitalization rates. And page 10, experts of Municipal Assessment Act. And page 11 through 14 are the income and expense mirror that was submitted by the property owner, which provides all the expense sections of it. And page 15 through 19 again gives us a study of cap rate on page 18 and the study for the expense rate on page 19. That's I guess that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Question?
Sure. Are you aware that in the last go around, this board reduced this assessment to $670,000?
So I believe that this is assessment de novo, they call it. So it's we have to reassess it based on the new evidence.
New evidence? Oh, okay. All right, so a rise over the last cycle of 150% is appropriate in the city's mind. Okay, now this is metal frame and wall construction, correct?
Correct.
And the leasable area is 416 square feet.
Correct.
Okay, have you ever been to this property?
No, I don't.
It's got a huge canopy, but it's got a tiny kiosk. Are you aware of that?
Well, that helps.
Okay, and we've agreed, I think in the first file, we said that we've all understood that we're removing the pumps, tanks, and canopies, we're capturing that in an adjustment. So what we're left with is the bricks and mortar retail. In this case, we've got a 400 square foot store, correct?
We have 416 square feet convenience store.
416 square foot convenience.
Convenience store or
That's
gas
right.
station. Let's put it that way.
Well, no, we removed the gas station.
We cannot remove the gas station from a convenience store.
All right, I'm gonna direct you to page, where is this in your brief? Have you not, okay, here we are, page 8. This is where you removed the gas station, correct?
This provides information on pumps and the tanks that are in the gas station.
This is the depreciated replacement cost. You removed these from the calculation, and then you add it back as an adjustment, correct? So when we move those out, what we're left with is a retail store, and in this case, it's 416
No,
square feet.
what we are left with is, we are left with a convenience store. I would agree to disagree with you. We are left with a convenience store of a gas station. We are still dealing with a convenience store of a gas station.
Okay, no, I'm gonna suggest that's inappropriate, because what we're doing.
Never
is-
mind whether it's inappropriate or not,
Okay,
you can do that.
But that's just methodological.
Just ask the question.
Okay, fine, that's fair, but it's, okay. All right, so you're suggesting that the lease rate on this 416 square foot kiosk is $204.26 per square foot, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's modeled?
It is modeled.
And your cap rate is modeled?
Correct.
Okay, so you're defending the model, you haven't overridden any part of this? Okay, and you're suggesting that your page 8 here is not a replacement cost of the pumps, tanks, and canopies? Is that what you're suggesting?
Page 8 is the replacement cost of the is a depreciated cost of pumps, canopy, and tanks. Yeah.
Okay. All right, those are my questions, thanks.
Questions?
Okay, typically the pad site lease would include all the land that the station uses?
Yes.
Okay, so and then that's factored into the lease on the small little kiosk that's there.
Yes. Yes, I believe so.
We'll discuss. Okay. All right, no more questions.
I have one. On page 5, Arca, you skipped net rents. I noticed that your model is using $204 as your rent,
Yes.
but there's nothing in your comparables that come close to 204.
Correct.
The highest being Inkster.
Mhm.
I'm looking only at the ones that don't have a car wash,
Yes.
by the way, just so I'm hoping I'm looking at,
No,
The
you're
better
absolutely right,
comparables.
and
yeah.
the way model looks at it is, it also takes into account location, age of the building, and so on, so. But I agree with you 100% that there is, based on the comparables on page 5, the highest one is 188.57.
Yeah, and just looking at the age, I'm looking at comp 10 specifically.
Yes, and it's.
Keniston, it's the same age as the subject, and it's pretty much the same
And
size.
I believe it is also a Safeway store to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
so maybe, and there's the actual rent of 150.
Correct.
Okay. But do you think your model might be overestimating the value of this property based on some of these comparables you brought?
I think so, the way when I looked at it, it also I also noticed it, but it would appear that the location on Goulet made it the model kind of applies a higher ratio to it for one reason or another, so that's the way I understood it.
Okay, like a Goulet location might be better than a Keniston location? Is that what your model is suggesting?
That's what it is, so yes, and yes.
Okay. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Do you ever review this stuff before you bring it to us? The land plan area 2910, that's just with the gross floor area of this big store you're talking about, right? You didn't take into account the canopy.
I think it just takes the plan area of the building, yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't take into account that 3/4 of the thing is covered by canopy for the fuel pumps.
I don't think it does, no.
You're not gonna be using it for parking, like 29.10. That'd be one big lot.
Well,
And then when you use the sale on here, you know that, and I think you might have mentioned it, that included the Safeway store and the rest of the
I
property.
believe so, yes. That's what they did
Everything.
say, that it's a
Oh,
multi-level sale.
yeah.
It wasn't just one gas
No.
station. No.
Or the Swift gas station.
And, I'm sorry, you think Goulet is a better area to sell gas than Keniston?
Well,
Have you ever done a traffic count?
I see your point, Mr. Chairman. I speak to how the model sees it, that's all.
The model, what's the model finding? I'm tired of this, the model. Tell me what the model used to come up with a $200 and some odd dollar rent. What did the model find to produce a $204 rent on a 416 square foot, which has washrooms in the back, by the way, and has a kiosk inside of the kiosk where the guy is safe behind glass? So the front piece is how many square feet of actual store?
Well, every store has sections for the bathrooms and I guess areas for. The way, again, you're probably tired of it, but the way model looks at the plan area of total for the kiosk, which is in this case 416 square feet. It did apply the rate of $204 per square foot.
Okay, I got no further questions. On with your
Thank you
presentation.
very much, okay. 260 Goulet, again, the way that we approach these, I don't think it bears repeating, but the way we approach these properties is we take the pumps, tanks, and canopies out, and what we're left with is a store that's a 416 square foot retail store. And Chair's rightly pointed out that it's, you could probably almost put your arms across and touch one wall to the other, and I'm suggesting it's probably not a huge market or any market for a 416 square foot kiosk. Okay, so just to get to how we've arrived at our number, we we were trying to determine the market rent, so we looked at rents of actual retail spaces that are reasonably small, under 1,000 square feet. It's difficult to find anything that's 400 square feet unless you're talking about like an actual physical kiosk, like a Wago Center or something in a mall. So again, the city's used $204.26 per square foot. We're saying the model is missing something fairly severe here. There's also an adjustment of $341,000. Again, that's the pumps, tanks, and canopies. Now, the following retail rental rates were considered. We looked to Meadowwood Drive and we looked at Dakota, and we see some reasonable rates there. And we're saying, okay, somewhere between $15 to $20 is reasonable. It is standalone. It's grocery anchored, which is a benefit to be certain. So we applied a rate of $25 per square foot. Using an alternative indication of value, we've looked to these other comps on the bottom here, and we're saying, okay, the overall market rent on an annual basis ought not to exceed $30,000. So that's $72 per square foot overall. Those are gas bars that are smaller as well, pad sites. So that's the main point of contention. Again, vacancy at 5%, shortfall at 6%, non-recovered at 7% as an erosion to the effective gross income, and a cap rate of 7%. Now, just as a point, Marshall, which is Marshall and Swift, we've spoken about that today, they say that the lives of these smaller improvements based on the steel frame construction is 15 to 25 years. However, because of the store's long hours, heavy foot traffic, the deterioration of the interior happens at a no rapid rate. I alluded to that earlier. The assessor said he disagreed with it, but Marshall clearly states that. Okay, so on the when we take all of our points together here, we do add an adjustment of $292,950. That's consistent with the methodology we've used in terms of the depreciated costs, plus a slight adjustment upwards. We come to a total value of $669,808, rounded to $670,000. And again, we were valuing the 416 square foot kiosk. Barring any questions, that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Questions?
So, yes, we covered this type of properties back and forth. Let me just take a quick look. Actually, no, I don't have any questions.
Lynn, do you have any questions?
No.
Do you have any questions?
Do you have any comparables of other 400 square foot gas kiosks? We're not valuing the 7-Eleven, we're valuing the gas kiosk.
Right, but we are valuing we're taking the gas component out and capturing that in the adjustment.
It's still a gas kiosk.
It is a gas kiosk, to be certain.
Do you have other comparables of other gas kiosks?
Yes, we have, they're about 1,000 square feet though, and that's on, I'm sorry, it's not numbered, but that's our indication. So we're looking at the sort of the universe of retail and then the smaller gas. So we do have we have Lilo, we have a 200 square foot, that'll be a Domo.
Which one?
That's comp, they're misnumbered, they say 1, 3, 4, 5, but that ought to be the fourth comp, but it is pushed on the list on the second.
Dakota?
Nope, it's Lilo. Right.
Lila?
Yeah, on the second.
On the bottom?
Yeah, so at first we used kind of strip malls that are similar to, this is how we approach these. We use strip mall retail to come to a rate. We say, okay, if this was pure retail, you're right, it would be lower if it were retail, but it is a gas bar. So then we look at other sites and we say, okay, well, for something of this size, we're coming to an indicated annual rent of 28 to 31. So we've used 30,000 in our calculation, and those are smaller gas bars. So
But then you're using on a per square foot basis, you're using
the annual rent, because it's not, you don't look at this and say, well, it ought to be $250 a square foot. You say, what are these generally? What are the leases? What do they tell us? Well, they don't tend to exceed $30,000 on an annual basis. So that's how we've consistently approached this property.
what is the Narren Avenue one?
I'm not sure what the actual enterprise is, but it's a small gas bar. It may be a Domo, one of those dashes. I actually have something I can tell you. Alright, and then we're looking at, that's a Suncor.
Okay. But then Domo typically is, I know the one on Leda is just 2 pumps.
Yeah.
And you do it on your side, whereas this one is, how many pumps on this thing?
I think there's 8 on this one.
8.
But we,
So considerably larger in terms of the overall site.
more like an area one.
Right, but again, the pumps are captured in the adjustment, that's the approach that we take with gas bars. We take them out, we capture them in the adjustment, their replacement costs. So we're valuing the bricks and mortar, the actual physical structure of what we call the C-stores. So that's what this is. I agree, it's a sort of a mixed methodology. That's how the city applies it, that's how we do it as well.
No more questions.
Why wouldn't we use the actual lease cost? Because they don't own this, they're leasing it, aren't they?
No, it's owner occupied.
Oh, these ones
This-
are-
yeah,
this
one's
one is owner
yeah,
occupied?
Absolutely, yes it is, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Good as I'm gonna get. Ready? Saint Joseph. Here we go, we're moving into Saint Boniface. Hmm? What,
Write down
in a
what
minute? Go ahead.
I'm ciphering what. No, I
It's
got it.
easier to decipher after if you write something down then.
Oh, I did.
Mr. Chairman, may I request a 5-minute recess,
5 minutes?
or a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Shut it down for a minute.
I just said it.
That's a good. No, we're back on 757 Saint Joseph. When you are ready, Arca, bring it on.
That's not my evidence, it's. Let's see. So subject property, file number 193342, roll number 060601810000, street address 757 St. Joseph Street, owner St. Boniface Collision and Refinishes Limited. For 2020 assessment year with a reference of April 1st, 2018, assessed value is $606,000. Property description, it's 19,198 square feet land, a parcel size, and 3,760 plan area. The, I guess, property was originally built in 1900s, it has 1930 effective year build. C masonry type wall, and zoning there is R2 residential to family, and we are asking to maintain the assessed value at $606,000. So again, so the following 2 pages provide aerial view and some street view of the subject property. So it's St. Joseph right on the corner of Albert there, and again, page 4, it's basic information on sales, subject sale and so on, which there isn't any. Page 5 income, page 5 are again comparables. And the best comparables for this property, in my opinion, are comparable 13, 18, 19, 23, and 38.
Repeat those, sorry.
Okay, so 13,
Mhm.
18,
Mhm.
19, 23, and 38. They've been selected based on each their older types of buildings. The rest of them are newer on the list here. And they average rent for those 5 properties I mentioned would be $11.36 per square foot. So subject property has 3,760 feet, I'm on page 6 now, 3,760 square feet of leasable area at $10.56 per square foot, $4 of, 4% for vacancy, 2% for expenses, $4.50 for shortfall, with overall capitalization of 6.05%. Gives us a value of $606,000. Following pages are just general information. Starting from page 8. Cap rate excerpt from Municipal Assessment Act. Income and expense information provided by the property owner, which is just checked out that it's fully owner occupied. And it gives a net operating income of $28,077. Again, page 15 provides capitalization rate evidence. And page 16 provides evidence on the non-recoverable expenses. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Question?
Yeah, just really quick. Okay, so this building was built in 1900, and has it always been used as a vehicle service garage?
What else was it used for?
I'm just asking. Lisa might ask the next question.
Well, this is 2013 it was. Let me see how far back it goes. This from 2013 was a garage for sure.
Okay, fair enough. Now, so we talked about environmental site analysis, and the first stage is we look at the past history of the property, and we say, is it likely that the site is impacted or contaminated? We suggest that we move on to a phase 2, based on the fact that this has been an auto body shop since 1900.
Since when?
1900, 1900, that's when it was built, right?
It was built in 1900, but unless you know and prove that it was a body shop since it was built.
Like traditionally, this has been a bunch of auto body shops, and the parcel across the street is actually on the list, but it was remediated for residential, just multi-family residence. Okay, fair enough. Now, let's move on to your page 2. Would you say this is an irregularly shaped parcel of land?
It is a regularly shaped parcel of land, yes.
Pardon me?
It is irregular.
It is, okay, good. It's fine. Now, you mentioned that your best comps here were 13, 18, 19, and 23, is that correct?
13, 18, 19, 23, and 38.
Okay, now, comp 13, that's on this docket today, that role doesn't exist anymore, that's why we're adjourning it. That's 614 Lorette. Comp 18 is that's single tenant, that's a Fountain Tire, that's probably not comparable. Number 19 is on Dudley, okay, it's a Boyd Auto Body. And then 23 is on Dougal, that's not arm's length, are you aware of that?
23, St. Mary's.
No, 23, oh, I'm sorry, St. Mary's, that's right, I looked at the wrong one there. Call 23, 421 St. Mary's. My apologies, okay, oh, you know what, the city changed some of these, since we did they took a couple of, 421 St. Mary's, that's the buildings in 2 components, that is, single tenant, oh, that's a mold remediation, firm, that's not auto body related, are you aware of that? They do asbestos removal and mold remediation.
So, based on the information I have, it is a vehicle service garage.
So you haven't looked at these comps, that's fine. Thank you very much, those are my questions.
Lynn, do you have any questions?
No,
You good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Neil, do you have any questions?
Just a question on the cap rate, 6.05 for a 1900 vintage building?
With a little bit of a lean to it?
Well, the reason why model uses smaller cap rates is on the smaller buildings is because typically those small buildings are being purchased for older occupants, and they pay more slightly. They pay slightly above what an investor would pay for a property to be rented. That's why the evidence there that smaller buildings, based on sales evidence, have smaller cap rates. That's why.
Well, I don't know, it doesn't strike me you'll get a bidding war on this property. Okay, yeah, that's it.
I got no questions
Okay,
on
thank
your
you very much.
presentation.
Okay, so this is 757 St. Joseph in St. Boniface, built in 1900, of course. The city is suggesting a value of $606,000. We're saying based on the income, value of $229,000 is more reasonable. And just doing a quick calculation, that's a pre-demolition calculation of $12 per square foot. Okay, now I'll direct you to page 4 of my brief. You can see this is very interesting. Here's our subject of my little marketing group. There's also this little corner piece attached, and there's I believe this is you call this public reserve land that's just running through it. So it's like a large corridor, kind of an easement. And this land has all been kind of sliced and diced. It's been developed. It's probably best described as a future redevelopment, I would imagine. Again, I would say that given the history of the subject and based on what we know about environmental site analysis, we would likely proceed to a phase 2 if we were to look to a higher and better use. Across the street used to be an auto body shop as well, and it's now been converted. It was on the impacted sites list. Okay, so we've looked to the market. Again, it is very difficult to find buildings of this vintage that are operating and they're not necessarily owner occupied. So, and I don't know that the market is vast, but we have found some comps that I think are probably generally superior. I don't believe in them, but with all points taken into consideration, we see an average rent of $740 and a median rent of $740 on the comps that we've selected. But we will say that based on the quality of this building, the structure, a rent of no more than $6 per square foot is probably typical of market. We've used a vacancy rate of 4%. We are using the 450 shortfall. I don't believe that's a dispute. Again, we continue with non-recoverable expenses at a rate of 7%, and a cap rate of 8.5% to capture the age, to capture the irregular site size, and the fact that there's a giant, I don't call it an easement, but it's public reserve land. It's running right through it. It would affect its next most developable purpose. Okay, so with all those points taken into consideration, we come to a total indicated market value of $228,997, rounded to $229, and as a check on the resulting value by the income approach, which is $11.92 per square foot. We did a land value analysis. I've got sales on Marion, Archibald, Dugald, and again Archibald. Vacant land sales. Now some of them are older, some of them are a little newer, but they do come to an average of $776 and a median of $816. So we're ways off. We see that the value is probably still is higher as this auto body shop as opposed to land. So we do suggest that the value of $606,000 is not appropriate. We respectfully submit that the board amend this to $229,000 for the purpose of this assignment of other photos. You can see it's an older structure. There's kind of scattered parking on the lot. There is some land, but it's the owner. It is owner occupied. The owner is parking kind of cars in a scattered way throughout the lot. And yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Arka? I hate to even ask him if he has a question, because he looks like he's dying on me.
I'm not dying. Yes. So I'm still alive.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm still alive. Thank you very much for the
So once you know we love you, okay?
Somebody poke him with a stick.
All right. So have you visited the site?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in your opinion, did this property had any renovations done since it was built in 1900s?
Oh, I should hope so. It's 120 years old, so I would suggest that it has, but I would not say that it's high quality. It provides the owner the utility of running his auto body shop.
But we can agree that it has had some sort of updates and renovations since
Yes,
it
it's
was
had-
built. So
it's-
it's obviously 1900 building anymore, correct?
Yeah, it's built in 1900.
So some effective age is warranted. Would you agree with me?
Pardon me?
Some effective age would be warranted.
An age variance?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that. Not necessarily. It's built in 1900. That's what it is. I don't see any, I mean, it's maintained, it's standing, to be certain.
So it's maintained, but you don't believe that electrical, mechanical arrangement has been
I
updated
think
since
that
1900?
it's pretty, I think you'd be surprised how true its vintage is. That's what I'd say.
Oh, it's just a lot of things.
Why don't you go visit the site?
Yeah, why don't you check it out?
Okay. Well, anyways, like I would just say one thing. Would you agree that a lot of things that property, buildings are required to have today for operation weren't even in existence back in 1900s?
Sorry.
Like electrical wiring, communications, pipes weren't even in existence in 1900s. So a lot of those things were updated and modified later on.
I don't think that you know that. We don't want to be speculating, wouldn't we? I can tell you it's a very old building. And it's providing the
I'm
owner-
not speculating when I'm saying that in 1900s there weren't a whole lot of things added to the
No,
building.
the outhouse was in the behind,
Yeah.
okay?
So, so I would you agree with me that it had to have some updates from 1900s? It's not in the same original shape, just maintained as it was, as if it was built in 1900s. Would you agree with me?
Well, I don't know what you're necessarily driving at, but I think that it's a very, very old building. And I think
Well,
it's very true to its.
Well, gentlemen, we don't have to
Okay.
debate how old it is, we know how old it is.
All right, fair
Neither
enough.
of you have visited, neither of
I've
you
been
know
to-
what
I've
shape it's
visited.
in.
I've not been inside, but I have visited. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's an old
No,
building.
other than that.
Any other questions?
No, I don't have any other
None?
questions.
Neil?
No.
Lynn?
I have just a quick one. So, Jared, you're
Yeah.
basically saying that by looking at the land value, and I appreciate that you did that,
Yeah.
it's in line with comparable vacant land sales?
Yeah, it's a value check. So here's the issue, when I see an assessment like this, and I see what my indicated market value comes out to when I income approach it, well, we're a ways away.
So
I
you're-
wanna make sure that I'm,
No, I get that, yeah. So you're giving no value to the building, essentially?
oh, no, okay, so it's
Because you're
only,
comparing it against vacant land sales.
well, it's getting to the point where it's, at some point, we have to look at highest and best use, and it's just, and I'm not suggesting I've been a highest and best use analysis, but I am saying that if we say, okay, like, there's utility to the owner, now theoretically, if we put this building on the market, what do we think it might net to an owner? $6 seems reasonable, the vacancy parameters, the erosions to the income streams, comes to an indicated market value, and it's at $209,000. And so then we take that value and we say, okay, what's the pre-demolition cost of this land, and that seems to be in line, so, when all those things hang together, I think we've come to a reasonable indication of value.
And you couldn't find any comparables of this age
Wow. No, it would be
anywhere in the city?
perhaps, but well, you know what, there's one, I think it's 185 Bannatyne, but that's sort of a different piece, that's an auto body shop that's attached to a heritage building.
Good shape.
Yeah, and I think that rent is in and around that $6 range, so, yeah.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks.
Thank you. Can I get you to pass me your sheets for items 7 and 8? We're gonna adjourn those items. Arca?
Is that,
7 and 8, we're gonna adjourn them to another day.
We've gotta clear that up.
We gotta clear some stuff up on them. Plus, it's gonna speed us up a little bit. So we're gonna move to 986 Arlington. I wish she doesn't have to reprint it for the next meeting.
We're gonna have to.
Do you have?
Sure. Here's mine.
It has the wrong information on
Huh?
it. It has the wrong, it will have the wrong pattern, it's the wrong date.
Well, it's- You'll have to redo it later.
Well, that's just a cover sheet.
986 Arlington.
okay, subject property file number 191812, roll number 13062059100, 986 Arlington Street. Owner is, okay, there are multiple owners, 60889 Manitoba Limited, 669802 Manitoba Limited and Bricklexa Management Incorporated. Roll for 2020 was roll year with the reference date of April 1st, 2018. The assessed value is $390,000. And this property also has a preliminary issue, so I'd like the board to as a board to request that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation per section 53(3)(b) of the Municipal Assessment Act, as if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follows the section 54(3)(2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. For reason being that the information that property income and expense request information on page page 10 and 11 did not provide information to the city.
Speak to it?
Yes, absolutely. They've provided, they're telling you, this is Curtis Tire again. They've told you that they're owner occupied. They're giving you the square footage. They're not generating any rent. So what in your mind is tantamount to a failure to comply? They sent you their forms. They're telling you they're owner occupied. They're not generating rent.
Well, even owner-occupied properties provide information as to expenses and of such, so that is where I would still request non-compliance.
The department was in contact with this controller. We saw that on the last file. Got no emails here. Was there any communication that you're aware of between the department? Clearly, you've been in discussions with them on one that we looked at earlier. This is Curtis Tire, right?
Yep. Let's see. Well, the information was sent to the Reflexa, but
Yeah. It's clear here on your page 12 that they sent you the form, they've given you the square footage. They said there's no change, there's no lease. They put a book rent down. I'm not sure how this is.
So you're saying that that's all the information you have to send?
I'm saying
what
that
you're saying?
if there was an issue that yeah, that's
Okay,
okay.
we'll leave it at that. Gentlemen? Fire it up. 96 Arlington is back on the agenda, and we are accepting the city's request to burden of proof be placed on the applicant. So Jared, you go first.
Okay, thank you very much. 986 Arlington, roll number 13062059100, file number 19-1812. Okay, again, we've got a tire operation, 986 Arlington Street. That is the corner of Arlington and William. Now, this is best described as an owner-operated vehicle service garage. Again, we are constructed in 1959. The land area is 15,366 square feet. It's zoned R2, which constitutes a legal non-conforming use. The zoning doesn't match the current use. And again, I will mention that the site is listed on the Manitoba Conservation Stewardship's contaminated impacted site list. Okay, so it's owner occupied, so we look in the market to determine an appropriate market rent. A number of leases here that I would suggest that the best one that I have is on Henry Avenue. It's an older place. It used to be a brake and alignment shop. It's now known as Home Job Auto. It's good. I would say that it's probably reasonably comparable. at any rate, our average of these comps is $7.60, our median comes out at $8.08, so I'm using a rate of $8 per square foot. So the total gross potential rent on a net basis is $22,720. And we'll apply the 4% capital, 4% vacancy rate, shortfall of $4.50. We continue to apply 2% for structural reserve and 5% for non-recoverables. And then we do recognize the age of the suggested location is probably inferior. So we're using an 8% cap rate, and we also have a legal non-conforming use, which is not a good thing, and we also are on the impacted site list on a plot that is zone R2, so that is impactful. So with all these points taken into consideration, we come to an indicated market value of reference date of $247,165, and we do ask that this board, we respectfully submit that the assessment be adjusted to $247,000. I've got some photos at the back of the brief. I've got the owner, I've got the same income expense that was mailed in, saying that's owner occupied. And barring any questions, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Questions?
Just a quick question. Are you aware of, have you inspected the property?
I've been by it many, many times. I own one.
Okay. Are you aware of any sales on the property?
And where are the sales? There's a multi-role sale, is there not? What are we talking about? I believe there's a multi-role sale you mentioned in the last time we talked about Curtis Terry, I believe. Did you not?
I don't think I mentioned this one.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
You
No, I
are
don't know.
aware of any sales?
Sales, I'm giving an income approach to value. So I'm looking at the potential income on the fee simple interest of the property.
Okay. No, I guess that's all I have for the questions.
Lynn?
I was looking at your comparables.
Yep.
Page 7, you mentioned Henry is the best one.
I think so, yeah, just in terms of the utility that we provide to.
And what does Henry do, sorry?
That's,
Changes
it's all-
tires?
Yeah, it's a body shop. So it's not
Body
a-
shop or tire shop?
Body shop.
Is Curtis Tire this subject?
It's a tire shop.
Okay.
Rent ought to be lower on a tire shop, because there's lifts, and I don't think there's pits at the other place, but there's, it was a break and alignment place, so that would indicate to me that there would be lifts in there.
Are any of these other ones just straight tire shops versus body
That's
shops?
a great question. No, I don't believe they are. I think the majority are just body shops, yeah.
So, 1061 Henry is the only tire shop.
It's a
That-
body shop, yeah.
Okay, I'm confused. I thought you
They're all
said it
body
was a-
shops. No, they're all.
Is Curtis Tire a body shop or
No,
a tire shop?
Tire shop. So my rent actually might be high, because you pay more in a body shop with lifts, and if there's pits or anything like that, you'd likely pay more. Tire shop, but tire shop will have lifts too, so, no, I think they're reasonably comparable. Henry's not a great location, I would suggest. I don't think that this is a terribly good location, so it seems to, $8 seems appropriate to me.
All right, and your cap rate of 8,
Yeah.
and I think you mentioned a little bit, can you just talk to me about that one more
Sure,
time?
yeah, absolutely. So, I think traditionally we would use a cap rate of somewhere in the range of $7 for a property like this.
7%.
7%, I'm sorry. So many numbers today. Around the range of 7%, but we would adjust that upward based on the fact that it is a legal non-conforming use. So the site is actually zoned for residential, but it's, so if something happened to this building, you can build it again. That's without a variance.
So
That's
that's
the issue.
really the major issue behind the upward
Location.
adjustment.
Initially, and condition of the building, it's not, you'd say it's in objectively less than ideal condition, I would suggest.
Thank you very much. No more
You already, I asked you already, right?
No, but I have no questions.
Good questions, good. Arca, on.
Subject property with the file number 191812, roll number 1306205910, street address 986 Arlington Street. Actually, I read all this stuff already.
Yeah.
So parcel uses vehicle service related, land area 15,366 square feet, plan area 2,840 square feet. It's on our records, it's 1953 building. Yes, it is R2 zoning, and the assessed value is $390,000, and we recommend to maintain the assessed value at $390,000. Page 2 consists of the images of the subject property, aerial view on page 2 and the street view on page 3. We see bay doors, and it is Curtis Tire Service. Page 4, and I just want to point out that there was a sale in April 30th, 2013 for $350,000 consideration, and the sworn value of $350,000 and the sale of $335,000. And just to read a bit of a note, the sale on April 30th of 2013 for $350,000. Sales questionnaire received and verified this is a bona fide arm length transaction. The purchase price included $15,000 in machinery and equipment, which has been deducted from the sale price to calculate the adjusted sale price of $335,000. The property was appraised at $450,000. The property was purchased for its income potential and is occupied by the triple net tenant at $8.50 per square foot net. Using actual income information, market expense vacant and adjusted price, a cap rate of 6.1 is generated including the sales and analysis. So that was a note left by an assessor who verified the sale back in 2014. Page 5 consists of comparable comparable rents. And in my opinion, comparable 9, 19, probably 23 and 38 would be the more appropriate one, with comparable 9 being the most appropriate because it's on William Street and very close to such a property. And I would ask the board to consider that when they're looking at the values. And so with that, we have income stream for subject property, 2,840 square feet at $11.36, 4% vacancy loss, 2% expenses, $4.50 shortfall per square foot, and 7.65% capitalization rate. Overall assessed value is $390,000. And the rest of the report is standard information that we've been over already relating to things, so I'm not going to go over it. So that's my presentation.
Thank you. Question?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so you said your best comp is on William, 999 William?
So I believe it's the closest one, yes.
Okay, is that not an objectively better building?
I wouldn't say it, I cannot say whether it's a very similar year of construction.
Not a body shop or a tire shop though, is it?
I cannot tell you whether it's
It's a rental shop, it's Best Buy Auto, it's a corner of, right across the street is Diaz Auto, but this is Best Buy, this is auto, I believe they sell cars, that's a dealership, but it's an objectively better building. Okay, that's fine. Now, you're using a rent of $11.36?
the model does, yes.
The model, okay. All right, and you've accepted that? Okay, and you've mentioned the sale, have you included any of the details of the sale so that we can verify it? No, there's no details on this.
We spoke to.
Okay, there's nothing to report, okay, that's fine. Okay, 7.65 cap, that's modeled.
Yes.
Okay, I think those are my questions, that's good, thanks.
Lynn?
Yeah, are any of these comparables tire shops?
I cannot tell you whether exactly the nature of, I know they are very concerned with garages based on the part use, but specifics, whether it's a body shop, mechanics, or tire shop, I cannot tell you.
Would, in your view, would rents differ depending on, whether or not it's a tire shop versus a car rental shop?
I cannot answer that question.
Assuming it's in the same area?
Yeah, I cannot answer any further information.
Okay, and you've given us what you feel to be your best comps, so thank you.
Neil,
No questions.
good, on to the next property. Last one, 343 Sherbrooke Street. When you are ready, Arca. Oh no, here we go again.
We're not disputing the.
Not disputing it? Okay, so straight to you.
Yeah.
He's not disputing, we're gonna have him read it on, Arca?
Okay.
Okay, not
You
disputing.
don't have to read anything. He'll read all the roll number.
Okay, 343 Sherbrooke Street, roll number 13-08248350, file number 19-2411. Okay, this is an owner-occupied auto body shop. That's the corner of basically Sherbrooke and Portage, well, a little bit down the street from Sherbrooke and Portage, it's across from Lions Manor. It's a vehicle service garage. Now, the improvements were constructed in 1953 with an area of 5,618 square feet, which is well, say is an objectively poor land to plan. Going for this is one of the lowest ones we've seen today. It's a 2.65 land to plan. Okay, so it's very small and it's quite old. All right, so at the reference date, the property was leased to Adams Automotive. They're paying a semi-gross rent of $48,000 per year under a month-to-month lease. Now, what's interesting here is this has been a month-to-month lease since, I believe since 2001, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So the tenant has been on a month-to-month lease for the past 18 years. So after the deduction of the gross lease cost, the net rate was approximately $46,000 per year, or $8.20 per square foot. This net rate is also consistent with the market indicators for other VSG-related tenancies. So we've looked at, again, same table of these sort of older VSG properties in terms of our rents. So we do believe that the $8.20 per square foot is indeed indicative of market, based on the fact that we come to an average rent of $7.60 per square foot with a median of $8.08. Okay, so we're gonna use a vacancy rate of 4%. This has been consistent with what we've applied here today for similar assets. The shortfall, $4.50 per square foot. The non-recovered, again, 7%, continue to use that. And the cap rate for this asset is 8%, we believe. So traditionally, this has been an undisputed cap rate, and we don't see any compelling evidence to alter it. Given the locational issues facing the property, as well as its age, and the fact that the tenant is on a month-to-month lease for 18 years, that is tantamount to risk in our mind, and we have generally agreed that an 8% cap is appropriate. So with all those points taken into consideration, we come to an indicated market value of the April 1, 2018 reference date of $501,723. So we ask that the assessment be amended to $502,000. I've included some photos. You can see it's sort of, I would say that the front part, it looks all right, although there's an area issue here, and I didn't do this intentionally, but I see that on the Google slide, we have a broken door with it's covered with wood, and that's probably typical of the area. You do see some graffiti on the back of the building. The building is in objectively, I won't say poor, but it's in less than average condition to be certain. You can see on the owner's income and expense. This is an older one from 16. Again, I spoke to the owner, and he did say that he simply he did not send his mailers in this year. It was an error. At any rate, we believe that the value of $502,000 for this assessment cycle is more appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Arca?
No, I don't have any questions.
Lynn?
I have no questions. What?
I almost feel pressure to have a question, but I don't have any.
Okay, neither do I. On with the show.
All right, subject property, the roll number 192411. Sorry, that's a file number. 192411 is a file number. Roll number 1305.
You already read it already.
Did I?
No, you didn't. He did. You don't have to.
I don't have to, okay, fair enough. So it's vehicle service related building, area 5618. We are asking to maintain the assessed value for 2020 at $649,000. Page 2 consists of the pictures. They are similar to what the appellant has provided. Let's see. So page 5 has so page 5 has I guess So page 4 has some, there's some sales for the building, sale history for the building back in 2009. Page 5 provides information into comparable rents that are associated with vehicle service garages. Alright, so the way model goes is it's a 5,618 square foot building, and the rate model goes is associated with it, it's $9.58. We are using 4% vacancy and 2% expense, as well as $4.50 shortfall per square foot, and capitalization rate of 7.65%. Total value is $649,000. And that's just to mention that the rest of the report speaks on to cap rates and 2% expense study, and we've covered that many times. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just very quickly, okay, so we can agree that it's an older building, it's got a poor land to plan ratio, and we can see by the photos the general condition, that's fine. I guess we're not, and we're at 7.65, everything's modeled, and, no, I think we said it all. Thank you.
Any questions, Neil?
No.
Lynn?
I have no
And
questions.
I've got no questions. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for
Thank you, everyone.
that concludes the matters for today.